Chapter 1. Digital Sparks. I sent a message on a whim. Or maybe it was a ripple from another lifetime finally reaching the shore. Harper Ethan never expected much from social media. It was a passive ritual. Most nights, he'd scroll through Facebook while finishing his second beer, nestled into the old couch that had been handed down to him. His house on the same property as the farmer he worked part-time for was small but warm, lit by the soft amber glow of string lights draped around the window. Outside, the Wisconsin winter wrapped the town in silence. Snow blanketed everything, muting the world into something still and quiet, like a held breath. He had no big plans for New Year's. Maybe a movie? Maybe sleep? That was how most holidays passed now. Quiet, unremarkable, solitary. Then ping. A message request. From Harper M. He frowned slightly. The name didn't ring a bell. He clicked the notification and her profile opened. She lived in Missouri. They had a handful of mutual friends, mostly people he'd known in Wisconsin who had since moved south. Her photos felt different. Unfiltered. Soft around the edges. She had a way of looking directly into the lens without trying to be seen. The message read, "You have beautiful eyes." Ethan blinked. It didn't feel like a pickup line, more like an observation. It threw him. His first instinct was to ignore it, but something about the simplicity, the honesty, caught him off guard. He typed slowly, unsure why his fingers felt nervous. "Thanks. I'm kind of surprised to hear from someone like you." The reply came almost instantly. "What does that mean, someone like me?" He smiled, the corner of his mouth lifting for the first time in what felt like days. "I don't know. You seem real. Brave, maybe. Most people don't message strangers. Well, most people don't have eyes like that. They look like they've seen a lot but still hope anyway." Her words landed in him like a stone slipping into deep water, silent, but unmistakable. He didn't know what it was, her boldness, her vulnerability, but something clicked. They kept writing, their conversation spiraling quickly from surface-level jokes to late-night honesty. Harper told him about her job at the hippie shop, how she loved thunderstorms and hated cheese. She said Missouri winters were pathetic compared to Wisconsin's. Ethan told her about his cat, how he liked to fix things with his hands, and how he listened to music when he couldn't sleep. They messaged for hours that night. Soon they moved to voice calls. Her voice was warm and smoky like coffee brewed by fire, grounding, familiar, with an edge of wildness. She asked questions that cut through small talk, and she listened not just for a reply, but to understand. Ethan found himself saying things he hadn't told anyone, about how he felt stuck sometimes, how he worried he was becoming invisible, about the breakup from 2 years ago that still made him question whether love was something he could hold on to. She didn't flinch. She answered with her own truths, her fear of being too much for people, how she'd been left before not because she wasn't loved, but because she was never chosen. They kept talking every night, messaging, calling, losing track of time. One night, somewhere between 1 and 2 a.m., the conversation took a turn towards something more ethereal. "Harper, do you ever think some people are just meant to find each other?" Ethan, "You mean like fate?" Harper, "Kinda, but deeper. Like two souls cut from the same cloth, meant to cross paths no matter the distance or the timing." Ethan, "You believe in that?" Harper, "Yeah. I've read about something called twin flames." Ethan, "Sounds intense." Harper, "It is. It's not just romance, it's a mirror. Someone who reflects everything in you, your wounds, your light. They pull your soul out of hiding." She sent another message, then a photo of a handwritten poem from her journal. The lines were messy, ink smudged but alive. "I found pieces of myself in your silence like echoes in a canyon. I never meant to climb. You looked at me like you'd been waiting. Not just this lifetime, but 10 before it." Ethan stared at the words. His chest ached not in a painful way, but like something had been seen and softened. The room felt quieter, as if even the snow outside had paused to listen. Ethan, "You wrote that?" Harper, "Yeah, a few years ago. But it kind of feels like I wrote it for you." There was a pause. Then she added, "I don't want to sound crazy, but sometimes I think twin flames are connected like particles in quantum entanglement. Ethan. Harper. No. Seriously, two particles, separated by galaxies, but still reacting to each other in perfect sync. Distance doesn't break the bond. They move together, no matter where they are. Ethan felt a chill not from the cold, but from how right it sounded. Ethan. So you're saying, if one soul stirs, the other does too? Harper. Exactly. You feel it even when you try not to. Even when it hurts. That's what makes it real. He let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Ethan. I don't know what to call this thing between us, Harper, but it doesn't feel ordinary. Harper. It's not. And just like that, the space between their days began to feel like pages in a story already written. One night, just before they said goodnight, she asked, "Do you believe in timing?" He thought for a moment. "I believe in connection, even if it doesn't make sense yet." There was a pause, then she said softly, "What if I drove up there? For New Year's Eve?" He sat up. "Are you serious?" "Dead serious." "You'd drive all the way to Wisconsin? To meet a guy from the internet?" She laughed. "I'd drive to Wisconsin to meet you." He didn't know what to say. No one had ever done something like that for him. I feel something here, Ethan. I don't know what it is, but it's real. I don't want to wonder what if for the rest of my life." He closed his eyes. Her voice lingered in his ears like a song he didn't want to end. "You'll really come?" he asked quietly. "I'll leave early," she promised. "I want to see you before the year changes." When they hung up, Ethan stayed on the couch long after the call ended, heart racing beneath his flannel shirt. Snow was falling heavier now, dusting the world in white. Something about this felt different. Like destiny didn't knock, it sent a message, like a ripple from another lifetime. Finally reaching the shore. Chapter 2, 11:11. Quote, 11:11, the hour the universe whispers. They're still out there, feeling you in the silence, burning with the same flame. Twin souls, always drawn back by the gravity of forever. Harper? The night before she arrived in Wisconsin, Harper sent Ethan a message. 11:11, a number they'd both been seeing on clocks, receipts, mile markers, as if the universe was tapping them on the shoulder. Like it meant something. Like it was more than coincidence. Ethan replied with the same. 11:11, a shared code, a quiet knowing. A beat later, she added, "Tomorrow, I'll be in your arms. And I think part of me already is." Harper stared at the screen, heart thudding. What if I feel more than he does? What if I've made this too big in my mind? Then his reply came. And it wasn't just a mirror, it was an anchor. Ethan looked at the glowing numbers on his screen and exhaled. This is real. She's coming. Outside, snow kept falling. The sky had turned the color of ash. He stood at the window, coffee in hand, watching flakes drift in slow motion. The roads were clear now. The house was ready, fresh sheets, dishes done, everything in place, but nothing could settle the thrum beneath his skin. Her last message had been a photo from the road bare trees lining a long highway, a coffee cup in the cup holder, and two words beneath it. Almost there. His pulse hadn't calmed since. What if she looks at me and something's different? What if this magic only lives in messages and memory? Still, something deeper said otherwise. Something old and wordless. Then he heard it. Tires on gravel. He froze, moved to the door but didn't open it yet. He needed a breath. Needed to feel the moment fully. Then her car came into view, dusted with snow, streaked with salt. The engine cut off. The door opened, and there she was. Boots on the ground, blue eyes wide, like she couldn't believe she'd stepped into her own dream. Harper. She stepped out slowly, afraid the cold might shatter the surrealness. Don't cry, don't run. Just feel this. Because some moments aren't meant to be rushed. They're meant to be breathed. Ethan stepped outside. They didn't run. It was slower than that, reverent, as if their bodies already understood the sacredness of this collision. When they reached each other, there were no words, just arms, breath, the warm press of a forehead to a shoulder, then a whisper. I knew you'd feel like this. Ethan pulled back just enough to see her. Like what? Like something I already missed. Their breath mingled in the space between them, not quite touching. As if the universe itself was holding its breath. He kissed her then. Not like he'd imagined, because imagination doesn't have weight. It doesn't tremble or breathe or whisper back. God, Harper thought. It's him. It's always been him. Inside, they dropped her bags, sat cross-legged on the floor by the fire. No TV, no music, just the crackle of flame and the sound of two hearts adjusting to new gravity. Then they danced. No music, no steps, just movement, socks sliding on worn wood. Her head on his chest, his hand at her back. I've never felt so weightless, Ethan thought, and somehow more grounded than ever. How is this the first time I'm holding her when it feels like I've never let go? Later, Harper stood by the window, watching the snow spiral beneath the porch light. Ethan had put on a quiet playlist, soft acoustic songs that felt like memory, and firelight painted the floor in amber. He came up behind her, arms wrapping around her waist. She leaned into him instinctively. You came all this way, he murmured into her hair, and now you're here, like it's the most natural thing in the world. It is, she whispered, turning to face him. You feel like home. This, Harper thought, this is what the poems were always trying to describe. Not the heat, not the passion, but the quiet after, the safe. The sense that someone else's skin finally fits. They held each other in that stillness. No rush, no next. Then, an old love song began, slow, steady, full of longing whisper back. God, Harper thought. It's him. It's always been him. Inside, they dropped her bags, sat cross-legged on the floor by the fire. No TV, no music, just the crackle of flame and the sound of two hearts adjusting to new gravity. Then they danced. No music, no steps, just movement, socks sliding on worn wood, her head on his chest, his hand at her back. I've never felt so weightless, Ethan thought, and somehow more grounded than ever. How is this the first time I'm holding her when it feels like I've never let go? Later, Harper stood by the window, watching the snow spiral beneath the porch light. Ethan had put on a quiet playlist, soft acoustic songs that felt like memory, and firelight painted the floor in amber. He came up behind her, arms wrapping around her waist. She leaned into him instinctively. You came all this way, he murmured into her hair, and now you're here, like it's the most natural thing in the world. It is, she whispered, turning to face him. You feel like home. This, Harper thought, this is what the poems were always trying to describe. Not the heat, not the passion, but the quiet after, the safe, the sense that someone else's skin finally fits. They held each other in that stillness. No rush, no next. Then, an old love song began, slow, steady, full of longing. Ethan smiled, offered his hand with a playful bow. Dance with me again? She slid her hand into his. They moved barefoot, quietly, wrapped in something older than words. Harper rested her head on his chest, listening to the steady thump of his heart. A song she already knew. If the universe is watching, she thought, I hope it's paying attention. Because this dance wasn't about steps, it was memory, or maybe prophecy. It felt like they'd done this before, in a dream, in a life before this one, in every wish whispered into the dark. I used to wonder, she said softly, if something this rare could actually exist, if two people could feel this, certain. Ethan stilled. And now? She looked up at him, eyes full of starlight and snowlight and everything holy. Now I wonder how I ever lived without it. He wanted to say everything in that moment, that he hadn't truly breathed until her, that no place had ever felt like her skin against his, that every question he'd had about love now had one answer, her. But he didn't say it. Not yet. He didn't need to. They didn't kiss again. They didn't need to. It was enough to be here together as the world prepared to welcome a new year. The clock turned to 11:11, and in that second, between then and forever, they made a wish together, without saying a word. Chapter 3. Ever the Same. The snow fell silently outside as they danced in the golden hush of their first night. Ethan held her like she was both fragile and eternal, one hand on the small of her back, the other cradling her fingers against his chest, right over his heart. "I've imagined this 1,000 times," he said softly. "But this is better than any dream." Her eyes shimmered as she looked up at him. "I was scared it wouldn't feel real, that maybe we were just words and sparks on a screen. And now?" She brushed her lips against his jaw, smiling. "Now I know we're stars that finally collided." The music played on. Outside, the world prepared to count down into a new year. But inside, wrapped in each other's arms, they were already beginning. Already alight. Harper stood there in his flannel, bare-legged, damp hair curling from the snow, looking like a dream still deciding whether to believe in itself. Her eyes glowed with something between disbelief and longing. Like she couldn't believe this was real. Like she couldn't believe he was real. "Do you feel it too?" she whispered. He didn't answer with words, just stepped forward, cupped her cheek, and brushed his thumb across her lower lip. She leaned into his palm like it was the only solid thing in the world. The kiss that followed wasn't hesitant. It wasn't rushed either. It was inevitable. Their mouths met softly at first. An exhale shared, a promise whispered into the quiet. Then deeper, hungrier, like they'd been waiting lifetimes for this. Harper's fingers curled in his shirt, pulling him closer until their bodies pressed together. She gasped against his lips as his hands slipped beneath the flannel, fingertips tracing the warmth of her back, the curve of her spine, the softness just above her hips. "You sure?" he murmured, forehead resting against hers. She nodded. "I've never been more sure of anything." They moved to the bed in a slow, tangled rhythm. Every piece of clothing shed was a wall falling. A past released. A lifetime exhaled. He kissed her like she was sacred. She touched him like he was made of glass. Precious, breakable, and entirely hers. Her body fit beneath his like it had always belonged there, warm, willing, trembling with the weight of all they'd carried, and all they were becoming. When he entered her, it was reverent. Breath caught in both their throats. Their hands found each other above her head, fingers interlaced, hearts pounding in time. Each movement was slow, deliberate. Not just passion, but presence. Not just desire, but devotion. And still, somewhere deep in her chest, Harper felt it. A strange ache blooming beneath the joy. Not fear, not sadness, just something ancient and wordless. Like joy shadowed by memory. As if the stars that brought them together might one day call them apart. She didn't speak it. She just held him tighter. Outside, fireworks reached their crescendo bursts of color, lighting up the sky, echoing through the quiet landscape. Inside, they found their own kind of explosion, quieter, deeper, and just as bright. Afterward, they lay tangled in the stillness of new sheets and a new year. The only sounds were the slowing rhythm of breath and the quiet hum of something unnameable between them. Harper traced slow circles on his chest. "What just happened?" Ethan turned to her, eyes soft. "We collided." She smiled, eyes glistening with wonder. "You're the story I've spent my whole life trying to write." He kissed her hair. "Then let's write it together." It was new, and yet not. Like finding your name written in a language you've never learned, but somehow still understanding every word. Outside, the world was still and white. Inside, two souls no longer just words on a screen finally touched. And neither would ever be the same. Chapter 4. Fire in the Quiet. In the weeks that followed, time bent around them. Harper drove back and forth from Missouri to Wisconsin every 2 or 3 weeks. Hundreds of miles blurred beneath her tires, but it never felt long, not when she knew he'd be waiting. Always outside, hands in his pockets, smile softening the cold. He's always there, she'd think. No matter how far I drive, I arrive to someone who already missed me. Each reunion, a spark. Each goodbye, a soft bruise she carried quietly. They didn't need grand plans. The magic was in the ordinary. They danced. Anywhere. Anytime. A record player spinning Ed Sheeran. a Bluetooth speaker humming low, her phone crackling out a lo-fi beat while water boiled for pasta. They danced barefoot in the kitchen, on the porch beneath falling snow, in the hallway, lit only by their laughter. He'd press his forehead to hers, both of them smiling like fools. "Do you know," he whispered once, "that when I hold you like this, the world actually disappears?" She nodded, lips brushing his. "It's supposed to. How did I ever feel whole without this?" He wondered. Without her. They cooked. Ethan made egg sandwiches with Miracle Whip and grape jelly, strange, sweet, so perfectly him. Harper made spaghetti and garlic bread, always forgetting at least one thing on the list. Together they made habanero chicken legs, donuts from scratch, singing off-key, dancing barefoot as timers ticked and ovens warmed. He'd lift her onto the counter when she wasn't expecting it, kiss her with hands dusted in flour. "Dinner's gonna burn," she'd giggle. "So let it," he'd say, mouth already on her neck. And in that moment, she was all he could taste. They loved. Not just physically, but spiritually, emotionally, completely. Some nights, it was slow, like poetry in motion. Her body, a verse he learned patiently line by line. Each curve, each sound, a stanza etched into memory. Other nights, it was urgent, desperate to erase the miles between them. Breaths tangled, fingernails clutching, moans muffled against skin. This isn't lust, Harper thought more than once. This is communion. Between the sheets, their connection deepened. Ethan never rushed. He memorized her like scripture. Harper traced his scars and whispered poems into his shoulder blades. "I didn't know the shape of safety until it looked like your arms and sounded like your breath as you fell asleep beside me." No one has ever seen me like this, Ethan thought, and no one ever will. They always fell asleep, touching, tangled, hands clasped, sometimes with her head on his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat like a sacred metronome. And when she was back in Missouri, they stitched their days together with messages and voice notes. They told each other everything. Blurry selfies in paint-smudged clothes, quiet sky videos, deep confessions passed like love notes across the ether. Between the mundane and the magical lived the words they said most. "I weigh more than love you." It wasn't just a phrase. It was a promise, a tether, a truth. One night, she wrote, "I counted the miles, but I stopped at your name because love doesn't measure distance, only presence." He read it again and again, then replied, "You write like you already know how we end, and still you stay." She answered simply, "Because we're still in the middle, and it's beautiful here." He read it 3 times. She makes everything feel sacred, he thought. The silence, the ache, even the space between her visits. Somehow she turned distance into devotion, absence into something that pulsed with meaning, even pain, even waiting. When she wasn't there, she still was. In the coffee, he poured too carefully. In the playlist, he let run long after it ended. In the way he caught himself smiling at nothing. She was a presence, not a person, a warmth that lingered in the air even after she'd gone. A feeling that lived in the bones of the house, in the curve of his thoughts. And when she was there, touchable, breath-warm, wrapped in his hoodie and whispering poems against his neck, he remembered what it meant to be home. The world outside kept spinning, seasons shifting, responsibilities whispering. But inside their little pocket of time, nothing else mattered. They were building something, even if they didn't yet know how fragile it would be. Chapter 5. Sparks in the South. It wasn't the fireworks that lit me up. It was the way he stirred the silence. Like he knew how to set fire to the quiet places inside me. Harper. Harper showed up in Wisconsin with her music loud and her heart wide open. She leaned out the driver's window, blue eyes shining beneath her ball cap. "You ready, country boy?" Ethan tossed his duffel in the back and slid into the passenger seat, grinning. "Born ready." They hit the road for Missouri, their playlist, a winding mix of Ed Sheeran, Kane Brown, and whatever acoustic covers Harper had fallen for that week. They sang until their throats were raw, laughed over inside jokes only they understood, and held hands across the console like they'd been doing it for lifetimes. At gas stations, they split gummy worms and energy drinks. At rest stops, They slow danced in the parking lot just to stretch the moment out. It was late June, and the world smelled like sun-warmed fields and melted dreams. They pulled into the gravel lot just before sunset. A striped, red and white fireworks tent loomed ahead, pitched high against a sherbet sky. Behind it sat a camper, a weathered little thing with chipped blue paint and a screen door that creaked like it remembered every summer before this one. Harper cut the engine and turned to him with a grin. "That's home for the next 2 weeks." Ethan stepped out, stretched, and took it all in. "It's perfect." They woke each morning to birdsong and the hush of wind moving through the tent canopy. Days were long. The sun baked the gravel lot. The scent of gunpowder clung to their clothes. Harper was magnetic, selling sparklers to starry-eyed kids, charming parents into big box sets, flashing her smile like a firework of its own. Ethan manned the tent sides, restocked shelves, and mostly just watched her, awestruck. Sometimes she'd catch him staring and mouth, "What?" across the lot. He'd just shake his head and smile, the kind that tugged at the corner of his mouth like it couldn't help it. "You sell fireworks," he told her one afternoon, watching her tuck a sparkler behind a little girl's ear like a flower. "But you are one." She moved like flame, bright, bold, and beautiful. Then, one afternoon, the sky turned mean. Dark clouds rolled in fast and heavy. The Missouri breeze shifted lazy to angry in a breath. Harper looked up from her folding chair, just as the first fat raindrops slapped the pavement. Ethan?" she called, standing. "That cloud looks like it's about to eat us." He stepped out from behind the tables, box of Roman candles in hand, and looked skyward. "Yeah, that's not a cloud. That's the apocalypse." A sudden gust ripped through the tent, snapping sidewalls like sails on a sinking ship. One corner popped loose with a crack. "Grab the poles!" Harper shouted, already scrambling. They leapt into action, Ethan trying to restake the corner, Harper chasing down a box of bottle rockets that took flight like confused birds. Another gust knocked over a display table, sending firecrackers skittering across the gravel. "We're losing fireworks like it's the 4th of July finale!" Harper yelled, hair whipping around her face. "Pretty sure one of those mortars just rolled into Kansas." Ethan grunted, bracing himself like he was taming a dragon. Then came thunder deep and theatrical. Lightning cracked, close enough to rattlebone. Harper looked at him, soaked and breathless. "This is not in the training manual." Ethan grinned through the downpour. "You mean we don't get hazard pay for rogue Roman candles and spontaneous tornadoes?" When the worst passed, the tent sagged. Gravel shimmered with runoff. Ethan had a gash on his forearm from wrestling a stubborn stake. They stood there dripping, panting, surrounded by chaos. Harper laughed first. Loud, unfiltered, helpless. Ethan followed, rain in his eyes, joy in his chest. "Well," he said, "at least we know we work well in a crisis." She bumped his shoulder. "Remind me to put firework tent storm wrangler on my resume." Evenings were slow and golden. They cooked simple meals, pizza, hot dogs, deli sandwiches, and ate on lawn chairs outside the camper. Harper's legs draped across Ethan's lap, his fingers tracing slow, lazy circles on her thigh. "Feels like our own little world," he murmured one night, watching the sunset bleed through the trees. Harper leaned her head on his shoulder. "That's because it is." At night, inside the camper, they made love like it meant something eternal. "Promise me we'll remember this," she whispered. "It's already burned into me," Ethan replied. The space was cramped, the bed too small, but none of it mattered. They moved with reverence. Their bodies spoke in a language older than words. They whispered confessions into sweat-damp skin, memorized each other by candlelight and the rhythm of crickets. He kissed the freckles on her shoulder like punctuation marks. She tangled her fingers in his hair and gasped poetry into his ear. Outside, fireworks boomed for everyone else. But inside that little camper, they were the spark. Neither of them knew how much they'd missed this version of each other. Chapter 6. Epic. With him, even silence felt like foreplay. Harper. The summer night was thick with heat, humidity, and the hum of cicadas and distant laughter. The fireworks stand had finally gone quiet after a long day. The canvas walls of the big striped tent rolled down, shadows dancing from a single lantern swaying overhead. Harper tugged Ethan inside by the hand, barefoot on the pavement floor, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "You know this is a bad idea, right?" He smirked, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "So bad. Irresponsible. Dangerous even. Thousands of dollars in explosives just feet away. That's what makes it hot." She grinned, already leaning in. "You're such a pyro." "And you," he murmured, pinning her gently against the sidewall, "are irresistible when you're sun-kissed and smug." Their mouths crashed together in a kiss full of heat and laughter. His hands slid beneath her shirt, fingertips tracing sun-warmed skin. She gasped when he lifted her easily, legs wrapping around his waist as he pressed her against the plywood table stacked with inventory sheets and red, white, and blue rockets. "God, I've wanted you all day," he breathed, kissing down her neck. "Watching you boss people around in that tank top, pure torture." Harper smirked, tugging his shirt over his head. "You're lucky I didn't rip your clothes off by the crate of bottle rockets." "Oh, now that's an idea." They laughed low, breathless, as he laid her down across a crumpled blanket in the corner. The ground beneath them was warm, the lantern casting flickers of gold across her skin. She pulled him down, greedy for the weight of him, for the way he made the rest of the world disappear. Clothes fell away in whispers, her tank top fluttering over a crate, his shorts kicked into the shadows. Their bare bodies, tangled as thunder, rumbled in the distance somewhere, a storm building to match the one rolling between them. Ethan kissed a trail down her stomach, slow and reverent, until she trembled beneath him. "Say it," he murmured, eyes locked with hers. "I want you," she whispered. "Here. Now." He slid into her with a groan, and they stilled, stunned by the weight of them. Then they moved, slow at first, building rhythm with every pant, every kiss, every gasp. The canvas walls trembled around them, wind whispering through the seams. "You're gonna get us arrested," she moaned, clinging to him. "Worth it," he growled, driving deeper. She flipped them, straddling him, wild hair, flushed cheeks. "You like breaking the rules?" He grinned. "Only with you." She rode him like wildfire, back arching, moaning his name like a hymn. And just as their world exploded, heat, light, breathless sound, a firework outside whistled into the sky. It burst above the tent, unplanned, unexpected, perfectly timed. Afterward, they lay tangled in the aftermath, slick with sweat and laughing into each other's shoulders. "Think the spark set that one off?" Harper murmured. Ethan kissed her collarbone. "I think we're the fireworks." The lantern swayed gently above them, casting amber light across the curve of her shoulder. Sweat cooled on their skin, their breaths gradually sinking in the hush after the storm they'd made together. Ethan traced lazy circles along her hip, lips brushing her temple. "Still alive?" "Barely," Harper murmured, grinning against his chest. "You know we could have ignited the whole county." "Would have gone out with a bang," he said, smirking. She snorted. "You're insufferable." He tilted her chin up to meet his gaze. "You love it." Her smile softened. "Yeah, I do." They kissed again, slower this time, no urgency, no frenzy, just the kind of kiss that said, "We're not done. Not even close." Ethan rolled her gently onto her back, his eyes never leaving hers. He brushed damp strands from her face like she was something priceless. "Still want more?" he asked, voice like a secret. "Always," she breathed. "Always you." That was all he needed. He slid down her body, reverent, patient, worshipful. His mouth explored her again, deliberate and tender, making her tremble from the inside out. This wasn't about teasing or control. It was about awe, about devotion. Every touch said, "You are mine, and I will never stop wanting you." When she arched and whispered his name like it meant something sacred, he rose to kiss her deeply, sliding inside her once more, this time slower, deeper, like memorizing the way she opened for him. They moved together as if choreographed, her fingers tangled in his hair, his forehead pressed to hers. "Look at me," he whispered. She did. "I want you to see what you do to me." Her breath hitched. "Then don't stop." The second time was quieter, slower, like dancing in the dark. Their bodies moved like they'd always known each other, and when they came undone again, it was together soft moans, trembling thighs, whispered promises tucked into skin. Afterward, Ethan pulled her close, both of them sticky and warm and blissfully wrecked. Outside the tent, the sky was beginning to lighten in the east, the first hint of dawn. "Sunrise is coming," Harper murmured, curled into his chest. He kissed the crown of her head. "Let it. I already saw the best view tonight," she groaned. That was so cheesy. Still true. She laughed and curled tighter into him. "Next time, let's do this on an actual bed." "Where's the fun in that?" he murmured, pulling the blanket over them. The lantern flickered once, then went out, leaving only the soft sound of their breathing and the quiet promise of morning. Chapter 7. Afterglow. A love like theirs doesn't fade, it echoes in eternity, infinite and entangled. Harper. The morning after felt like the edge of a dream, quiet, golden, almost imagined. Harper lay tucked against his side, her legs slung over his, the sheet tangled low around her waist. A beam of sunlight slipped through the half-cracked window of the camper, catching the halo of her hair and the tiny freckles scattered across her shoulder. Ethan stayed still, afraid to wake her, afraid to shatter the peace that hung in the air like mist after a storm. His body ached in the best way used, spent, alive, but something in him had shifted, something deeper. He didn't believe in fate, but he believed in the impossible way her breath synced with his while she slept, the way her laugh still echoed in his head, the way her hand had rested against his chest like it had always belonged there. He didn't know what they were, not exactly. But last night, beneath the paper lantern glow and the echo of fireworks, he'd whispered her name like a prayer. And now, in the hush of morning, he wanted to say it again. Wanted to build 1,000 more nights just like that one. The air in the camper was warm, faintly scented with smoke and skin. Her thigh still pressed against his. Harper stirred, mumbling something into his chest. "I was dreaming," she said sleepily. "About what?" She tilted her face toward him, eyes heavy, lashes fluttering like she was still half in the dream. "About you." He smiled, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Good. I'm not ready to wake up yet either." Later, as they sat inside the fireworks tent, waiting for the day's rush, Harper pulled out her journal and wrote, "July 4th. Somewhere between the sky and his skin, I don't know how to write last night into words. I don't think language was built for it. It wasn't just heat, or hands, or the way he said my name like it, meant something sacred. It was more. It was the storm, and the stillness, the wild and the safe, the flame and the shelter. We were in this big canvas tent, full of fireworks, how poetic is that? Surrounded by explosions waiting to happen, and somehow, we were the most dangerous thing inside that canvas. He touched me like he already knew the shape of my soul, like he'd memorized the ache I never told anyone about. And when I looked into his eyes, God, there it was. That terrifying, beautiful certainty. Home. No one's ever made me laugh and fall apart in the same breath. No one's ever looked at me the way he does. Like I'm not just something to be wanted, but something to be kept. He kissed me and my walls forgot how to stand. And when he moved inside me the second time, under the lantern light, it wasn't just pleasure, it was presence. It was belonging. It was, yes. There's something about Ethan that quiets the chaos in my chest, and something else that sets it roaring. And I think I love both. I don't know what happens next, but I know how last night felt. Epic. Magical. That night, they watched the sky erupt in color from the roof of the camper. Fireworks exploded above them, thunder echoing across the fields. Harper pressed close to Ethan's side. "Promise me something," she said, the wind stealing half her voice. "Anything. Promise you won't forget this, even if, one day, it all gets hard." He turned to her, serious. "I couldn't forget you if I tried." Their fingers laced together. Their eyes met blue into blue, mirror into mirror. And beneath the fireworks, they kissed, not out of celebration, but to seal something sacred, something burning, something they thought could never break. Chapter 8. Between States and Stars. We planned it, but it still felt like the universe made it just for us. Some fire-lit pocket between states, time, and everything that ever hurt. Harper, they didn't stumble on the campground by accident this time. It was the plan. One night, after a long 2 weeks at the fireworks tent, Harper pulled up the map and pointed to a patch of green near the Missouri-Kansas border. There, she said, eyes glowing in the light of her phone screen. We camp here tomorrow night. Just us, the stars, and maybe a half-functioning fire. Ethan didn't hesitate. Hell yes. They packed light sleeping bags, leftover steak from the cooler, and the speaker Harper never traveled without. When they pulled into the clearing the next evening, the sky was already smudged with pink and orange. Trees lined the back edge of the site like quiet sentries. A 2-lane road stretched past, empty and forgotten. Harper parked the car crooked between 2 trees and stepped out, arms raised above her head. Home for the night. Ethan unloaded the gear, watching her from behind the open trunk. Her cutoffs were fraying at the edges, tank top loose and stained from firework powder. She looked wild and perfect. The tent went up quick, an easy rhythm. They'd done this before. While Ethan set up their bedrolls, Harper built the fire. It fought back, but she coaxed it into shape, sparks licking the air like they knew something. The steaks refused to cook. They flipped them 3 times, tried moving them closer to the heat, then farther. In the end, they gave up and ate them half raw, laughing between bites and dipping potato chips into the juice like savages. I swear this is how people get famous on YouTube, Harper said, licking grease from her thumb. Ethan took a bite, chewed slowly, then said with total conviction, "This is gourmet." As night fell, they wandered out onto the road. Not to leave, just to feel the dark. It wrapped around them like velvet, thick and still. Harper grabbed Ethan's hand and tugged him into the center of the road. "Dance with me. There's no music." "There's always music," she said, pulling her phone from her back pocket. A soft, acoustic melody trickled out, low and warm. Ethan smiled. "God, you brought a soundtrack?" "Obviously." They danced slow, her hands around his neck, his on her waist. The fire flickered in the background, casting gold against the trees. They didn't speak. Didn't need to. Later, they laid down right there in the middle of the road, side by side, fingers interlaced. Above them, the stars blinked like they were watching. "I want to bottle this moment," Harper whispered. "Take it with me when the world gets loud again." "You already have it," Ethan said. "It's under your skin. I can feel it in your hand." She didn't reply. She didn't have to, because the ache had already started soft, curling. The knowledge that in just a few days she'd be driving him back to Wisconsin. That this wasn't forever, but it was real. And sometimes, that's more sacred than forever. Back at the fire, they added more wood, letting the flames crackle loud enough to hide the ache in their chests. Harper danced again, barefoot in the dirt, spinning slowly under the starlight. Ethan watched, heart full and aching. They climbed into the tent just after midnight, skin warm from the fire and each other. He pulled her close, arms a familiar fortress, her head resting against his chest. "Promise me," she whispered into the space between his collarbone and heartbeat. "What?" "That we'll always find each other, no matter where the road ends." Ethan kissed her forehead, slow and quiet. "We're not just on the road, Harper. We are the road." Outside, the fire smoldered low, but inside them, it still burned hot. They fell asleep tangled in each other's arms. No music, no plans, just the firelight, the aftertaste of laughter, and the sacred quiet of being exactly where they were meant to be. Chapter 9. The Wild Between Us. There's a place in me that only wakes when I'm with him, something feral, untamed, ancient, like the earth remembers us. Harper didn't just know the place, she felt it deep in her bones, like a memory carried through lifetimes. A hidden clearing off a gravel road only locals knew, wrapped in towering pines and wildflowers, reaching skyward like desperate longing. The scent of pine sap hung thick in the air. Gravel crunched beneath their tires as they pulled in, sunlight flickering through the branches, painting the ground with golden stripes. A place that didn't need cell service because it had stars, didn't need music because the wind already knew the song. She'd camped here countless times, hiked the mountain trails until her legs ached. But bringing Ethan here? This was different. This time, it felt sacred. Just them. And the way their energy crackled like fire waiting for a spark. When they rolled into the campsite, Harper poked her head out the window, taking it all in, then announced, "Either someone fled this place mid-zombie apocalypse, or Missouri campers are feral." Trash bags, half buried beneath leaves, an abandoned tarp flapping like a tattered flag. A lawn chair melted into the fire ring like it had witnessed a tragedy. They set up the tent, built a fire, then danced around the flames as night settled in sweat-soaked, laughter-laced, burning hotter than the fire itself. Missouri in July wasn't gentle. The heat pressed against her skin like a dare. The air was thick enough to chew. Cicadas screamed their lustful songs. Even the breeze came at them like it had something to prove. Harper loved every wild second. Ethan caught her by the hips. "You realize," he murmured, "you're the hottest thing I've seen all day." "Oh yeah?" Harper tilted her head, eyes glittering. "Hotter than the sunlit Ozarks?" "Way hotter." His hands slipped beneath her tank top, tracing the curve of her spine. Her laughter spilled into his mouth like honey breathless, heady as he kissed her harder now. Hungrier. The kind of kiss that said, "I need you. Here. Now." Later, they wandered to a nearby picnic table. "You know what's wild about this place?" she asked, eyes locked on his. He stepped closer, already hard. "What?" She smiled, dangerous and slow. "It's about to get a whole lot wilder." Their mouths collided, feral and breathless. She was fire in his hands, untamed, insatiable, shirts yanked, bra peeled. Her skin flamed beneath his touch. "You're everything," he growled, gripping her hips. "Every damn thing." "Ethan," she gasped. "I want you. Right here. Right now." "Turn around," he rasped. Their eyes met hers, storm-lit, his dark with need. Slowly, deliberately, she turned around. Bent over the table, palms flat, she looked back at him wild and unbroken. He entered her in one slow, devastating thrust. They both groaned, breath hitching from the shock of it. She didn't just want him, she wanted to be seen. To be held wild and whole and unhidden. Leaning into his shoulder, she whispered, "I want to remember this forever." "You will," he promised, kissing her temple. "I will." "Because it's ours," she said softly. That gravity between them, aching, electric, undeniable. "Harder," she begged. "Give me everything." And he did. Their bodies crashed together, raw, primal. The table creaked beneath them. Birds scattered from the trees. She was wild and untethered in his hands, moaning into the forest like the earth itself bore witness. No shame, no restraint. Just skin, sweat, and a symphony of need. When they collapsed, slick, breathless, he kissed her spine and whispered, "You ruin me." She turned in his arms, kissed him deep. Good. Back at camp, they fed the fire beneath the rising moon. Flames leapt higher, casting golden light over her bare legs. Tank top knotted at her waist, wild hair glowing like a crown of flame. Harper spun barefoot in the dirt, hips swaying to a rhythm only she could hear, arms lifted like she was calling down the stars. Her laughter spilled into the night, bright, untamed, free. Ethan watched, mesmerized. Like she wasn't just dancing in the firelight, she was the firelight. Something elemental, dangerous, irresistible. "Dance with me," she called, voice husky with heat and wine and wonder. He stepped in. She grabbed his hand, pulling him into her orbit. They moved like gravity didn't exist. A grind, a tease, a game of pull and surrender. She twirled away, then spun back into his arms, laughter like bells echoing through the trees. He dipped her low, hair brushing the dirt, then pulled her into a kiss that stole their breath. Fireflies blinked to life around them, like stars descending to dance. She pushed his shirt up, ran her hands over his chest, breathless. "You feel like a fever dream." He laughed, low and reverent, resting his forehead against hers. "You feel like magic that forgot it wasn't supposed to be real." Her body pressed to his, skin hot and damp, breath tangled. She arched against him, kissed him like the night would never end. "You're wild," he whispered, gripping her waist, lifting her off the ground. "No," she whispered back, legs wrapping around his hips. "I'm yours." He carried her to the tent, stumbling with laughter and lust, hands tangled in her hair. They collapsed into sleeping bags like a storm breaking mouths, desperate, hands everywhere, clothes peeled away like fevered secrets. Their bodies met again, a rhythm born of heat, hunger, and something deeper. Older. The fire outside crackled. Inside, they burned brighter. When sleep found them, tangled and warm, it found them whole. And just before drifting off, Harper whispered into his skin, "That place in me, the one that only wakes when I'm with you, it's alive out here. Something feral, untamed, ancient, like the earth remembers us." Ethan smiled in the dark, pulling her closer. "I remember us too," he said. "In every life. Like the earth remembers us. And won't let us forget." Chapter 10. The Mountaintop. Some places don't just hold memories, they keep pieces of you. This mountaintop? It's where I remember how to breathe. Harper woke first. Dawn slipped in soft and silver through the mesh walls of the tent, pale light brushing over tangled sleeping bags and bare skin. The forest was quiet, save for the hush of wind in the pines, and a distant bird's slow song, low and sweet, like it had just risen, too. She stretched beneath the covers, deliciously sore in all the right places, each ache a memory. Beside her, Ethan lay still, one arm draped across her waist, his body curved protectively against hers. His breath tickled the back of her neck, warm and even. She didn't move, not yet, just felt him, the heat of his skin, the weight of his presence. For a long, soft moment, her fingertip traced the dip of his collarbone, the way one might trace the edge of a place they never want to leave. There was something sacred in how he slept here, out in the wild, where nothing could hide them. No noise, no pretense, just this quiet heartbeat between them. He stirred slowly, groaned, blinked against the morning light. "Hey, beautiful," he murmured, voice thick with sleep. "Hey, yourself." She turned, kissed him once, slow, sweet, lingering. He smiled into her mouth. "We should never leave this tent." She laughed, soft and low. "Tempting. But there's something I want to show you." His eyebrows lifted. "Another secret?" She tugged on a flannel shirt, still warm from sleep, and stood. "Come on, slowpoke. Bring your boots and your sense of awe." They packed a thermos of coffee and some apples, laced their boots, and slipped onto the trail, narrow, winding, known only to her. The woods breathed with the hush of early morning, wet leaves, dewy moss, shafts of golden light filtering through the pines. The ground was soft with pine needles, birdsong echoing high above like a living lullaby. Ethan followed her pace, watching the way she moved, quietly certain, as if the trees had taught her to walk. She kept glancing back, half smiling, that smile that said, "Keep up," the one that made him want to chase her forever. The trail twisted upward, roots tangled beneath their feet. They paused ever so often for a sip of coffee, breathless, grinning, completely unhurried. They spoke little, didn't need to. The forest spoke for them, and everything they felt hummed in the quiet spaces between. Eventually, the trees thinned, the light shifted brighter, cleaner. They emerged onto a flat stone ledge near the ridge's peak, carved by time and weather into a perfect, wild perch. It jutted out like a secret throne made just for them. And the view the world spilled open beneath them. Endless hills rolled like a sea of green, cloaked in mist curling from the trees as if the forest exhaled. Sunlight fractured through the canopy, scattering gold across leaves. Two hawks circled above, silent, powerful, unbothered. Their shadows skimmed the treetops, moving like omens across a dreaming earth. Harper stepped forward slowly, boots crunching over loose gravel. She settled onto the warm stone, arms wrapped around knees, breath slowing, quieter, as if the mountain itself steadied her. Ethan sat beside her, shoulder to shoulder. No words. Just stillness. Just sky. She looked out at the vastness. "It's always been my favorite spot." He said nothing, just nodded. Because yeah, he felt it too. That ache in your chest when something's too beautiful to hold. but too sacred to let go. The wind tugged softly at her hair. The thermos steamed between them. For a while, they simply sat. No need to speak, no need to move. The silence wasn't empty, it was full. Heavy with everything they didn't need to say. Then Ethan reached into his backpack and pulled out her notebook, the one she'd left in the tent. I hope you don't mind, he said, shy now. I saw this and thought, maybe we could write something. Together. She blinked at him. Her heart skipped. He opened to a blank page, tore it in half, and handed her a piece. No rules. Just you and me. Whatever comes. So they sat, knees touching, backs straight, pens moving across paper as the forest leaned in to listen. No soundtrack, but the wind. No meter but their beating hearts. When they finished, they traded pages. His poem was simple, true. The sky doesn't need stars if you're in it. Her words tasted like skin and fire and sky. One line reading, "You hold me like gravity learned my name. You kill me, Harper," he said quietly, voice tight. She leaned her head to his shoulder. "I bring you back, too." She glanced up at the hawks again, circling like sentries. They always come back here. Like they remember. Without hesitation, she climbed into his lap, arms wrapping around his neck. His hands gripped her waist, pulled her close. The kiss was soft, then deeper, fierce in its quiet, like a promise written with no need for paper. "I weigh more than everything you," she whispered into his mouth. He swallowed, brushed her hair from her face. "I know. I feel it. Everywhere." They stayed like that, cocooned in stillness, pressed close. Rock beneath them, sky above. Time paused. And for once, the world didn't need fixing, didn't need escaping. It just held them. Two souls carved from the same stardust. Finally still. Chapter 11. The Road Between Us. There's a kind of love that survives the silence between goodbyes and hellos. That's the one I'd drive through 1,000 miles of missing you for. Harper. The highway stretched ahead like a ribbon of gray, unspooling beneath Harper's tires as she drove south back to Missouri. Back to the heat, the hills, and the familiar ache of missing him. Wisconsin faded behind her, but Ethan didn't. He lingered like sunlight on skin, like the ghost of a song still playing. She could still feel his fingers tangled with hers, still hear his laugh between the trees, still see the way he looked at her like she was the answer to a question he hadn't known he was asking. "Ethan," she whispered into the empty car. When she finally pulled into her driveway, Missouri's summer air wrapped around her like an old sweatshirt worn. Warm. And not quite enough. The stillness inside her house felt louder than the hum of the engine, louder than the silence that had stretched across those long highway hours. She dropped her keys on the counter, fingertips brushing the wood, half expecting it to spark memory. She thought of his dining room, bare feet on tile, his arms around her, the way he whispered her name like it meant something sacred. That night, in her bed, she reached for the pillow beside her. Cold. Still. Empty. She pressed her palm to it anyway, eyes closed. Far away, in Wisconsin, Ethan sat on his porch beneath a bruised sky, stars blinking to life overhead. Her name glowed on his screen. He stared at it, thumb hovering, typing, deleting, typing again. Every message felt too small for what he wanted to say. When their texts finally passed between them, they weren't casual, they were compass points. Counting the days until I see you again. You're my wildest dream. I carry you with me, always. Harper read his words in her silent kitchen. She twirled in place, barefoot. Music, low and nostalgic, curling around her like smoke. She imagined his hands at her waist, his voice in her ear. "I'll be back soon," she whispered. One last spin before stillness claimed the room again. And then she was driving north. The road unfolded like memory. Asphalt and longing. Cornfields and hope. 689 miles. She drove through small towns and wide skies. Her playlist cycled through songs, soaked in their summer, each one an echo. She sang softly, the lyrics a thread pulling her forward. At a rest stop, she rolled down the window and let the breeze sweep in. It smelled like dust and promise. She wasn't running anymore. She was returning, because missing him wasn't the hardest part. Not having a plan was, but some things didn't need plans. They just needed motion. By late afternoon, fatigue draped itself across her shoulders. Coffee helped. So did texting him. Almost there, counting the minutes. His reply came fast. Can't wait to hold you. And when twilight kissed the horizon with violet and gold, she crossed into Wisconsin. The pines welcomed her back like old friends. Each turn felt like a heartbeat, each mile like breath. When she finally pulled into his driveway, she paused just for a second. The engine hummed. Her pulse thundered. Then the front door opened. There he was, Ethan standing in the fading light, arms open, smile breaking like dawn across his face. She didn't wait. She ran. They collided like stars, like answers, like everything the road had promised. Their kiss wasn't polite. It was crash and fire, ash and relief. The kind of kiss that says you're home now. Stay. 689 miles disappeared in the space between their mouths. The road between them had always been temporary. This love was forever. Chapter 12. Rhythm of Us. Some music doesn't just play, it awakens. It doesn't fill the room. It fills the soul, summoning the parts of us we forgot were divine. Harper. The house pulsed with a heat older than fire that night, not just from the hearth's glow, but from something ancient thrumming under their skin. The music spilling from the speakers wasn't just sound, it was a summons, a call to the wild places inside them, patient and hungry. Dark Viking chants echoed against the wooden walls. Drums rolled like thunder, crashing across a distant sea. Harper felt it first in her chest, a fierce rhythm tangled with her heartbeat. Ethan's eyes met hers across the room, a spark flaring in the silence, feral, playful. A dare. Without a word, he pulled off his shirt, revealing skin flushed and taut, the kind of body shaped not for display but for holding, for anchoring. Barefoot, he moved toward her with the slow certainty of someone reclaiming ground he'd only ever truly owned when she was near. His hips rolled to the beat, slow, deliberate, electric. Harper smiled, wild, knowing. The game had begun. She stepped closer, letting the rhythm take her. Arms lifting, fingers trailing along his heated skin. The music swelled, heavier now, as if it wanted to swallow them whole. The house vanished. There were no walls, no floors. Only pulse and fire and two bodies being called home. Ethan's hand slid to her waist, fingers splayed wide. He drew her into the orbit of his motion, hips pressing to hers. Heat bloomed under her skin. Their breath fell into sync. The drums didn't just play, they ruled. A primal score to a storm that demanded surrender. She arched into him, teeth grazing the stubble of his jaw. A low growl rumbled from his throat as he traced the line of her collarbone. Their bodies moved with instinct, rhythmic, hungry, letting the music strip them of thought and language. Every touch sparked, every beat dared them further. Clothes pooled at their feet like fallen armor. Skin met skin, electric and unashamed. Their bodies spoke a language older than words. Growls, gasps, whispered commands that echoed the storm outside and the one they were becoming. With a wicked grin, Harper flipped him onto the couch. She straddled his hips, her teeth sinking into the warm skin of his shoulder. She moved with intention, slow, then urgent, fierce, then tender. A dance of surrender and dominion. Ethan's fingers dug into her hips, grounding himself in the chaos of her. Mine, he rasped, voice thick with hunger and reverence. Then take me like it, she growled, nails dragging down his chest like lightning claiming sky. Sweat-slick skin met in a clash of movement, and sound breaths tangled, bodies shivering at the edge of too much. Each thrust, each cry, was both offering and demand. When Harper came, it was a wild cry, an exhale of surrender, the storm breaking open inside her. Ethan followed with a guttural sound that shook through him, her name, a prayer on his lips. They collapsed into the couch, hearts pounding in chaotic harmony. Firelight danced over their skin, flickering across the wreckage of what they'd made raw, divine. Ethan kissed the hollow behind her ear. Tender now, she pressed her lips to his throat. Slow and reverent, as if memorizing the shape of his warmth. They didn't speak. There was no need. Something sacred had been born in the storm. Something that would outlive the music. The playlist faded, but the rhythm between them lingered, pulsing steady in the quiet. Ethan woke to morning light spilling through the curtains. Her side of the bed was empty. Gone. But only to Missouri. Not from him. Her scent lingered in the sheets, cedar, musk, and something only he could name. On the nightstand, a note, written in her looping script. You ruined me. You rewired me. I love you for it. His phone buzzed. A photo. Her bare feet in soft green grass, sunlight falling across her skin. Her dress brushing her thighs. Legs crossed. My body's here. The rest of me is still wrapped around you. Ethan smiled. Took a quick video shirtless, hair damp from a run, breath low and steady. His voice soft with longing, and something mischievous. I miss the way you taste when you're laughing. And so their rhythm continued, not just through bodies, but across miles, through glowing screens, through whispered promises passed back and forth like sacred things. Harper texted once. I heard that Viking song again. Got chills. God. That night was magic. Ethan replied. I feel you when I close my eyes. Still smell your skin. Still hard for you every damn morning. Move here, she typed, breathless. Let's build something. Make art, burn food. Make love like we invented it. I'm already packing. Their rhythm wasn't just heat and firelight. It was also burnt toast and tangled laundry. It was grocery runs and morning laughter. It was the quiet between storms. One night, Harper whispered, soft with hope, I want the wild with you, but also the life. The messy, ordinary, magic in the small things kind of life. Ethan smiled into the phone. His voice steady. Sure, I'll give you all of it. The wild. The fire. Forever. Chapter 13. Beneath the Walmart sky. Somewhere between a back seat and a Walmart parking lot, we called it home. Maybe that was the first sign we'd lose it. Harper. Ethan packed his life into the back of his truck in late April. Boxes of memories, clothes, and a framed photo of Harper laughing beneath a fireworks tent, hair wild, eyes full of light. He drove away from Wisconsin with the windows down and the radio low, Harper's voice still echoing in his head. He was heading to Missouri. It was hotter than he expected. The air clung to his skin like damp cloth. Everything smelled like dirt and memory. But Harper was there, cut-off jeans, tank top, arms wide, heart open. Her smile brighter than the sunburned sky. For a while, that smile was all he needed. The first few months felt like a continuation of the dream. They shared groceries and chores. Sleepy Sunday mornings, with Kane Brown drifting from the speakers. They danced in the kitchen while pancakes sizzled. Made love on the couch, the floor, the bed still chasing the magic that had carried them this far. They camped on weekends, danced barefoot beneath stars. Summer wrapped around them like a promise they hadn't questioned yet. By late June, the fireworks tent rolled around again. The weather-warped canvas flapped lazily in the thick Missouri air, straining against zip ties and heat. Inside, boxes stacked like unstable towers, each labeled with names that sounded more like biker gangs or bedroom kinks than fireworks. They were supposed to be selling, but mostly they danced between displays, dared each other to guess fuse delay times, whispered names like foreplay. The July heat turned the tent into a pressure cooker. As the sun sank behind the Walmart, business slowed. They split a lukewarm soda and a melted Twix bar, sweat sticky on their backs, laughter soft and tired. By midnight, the tent was closed, duct-taped at the corners where the canvas had long ago surrendered. The truck was parked beside it, under a flickering parking lot light that buzzed like it knew secrets. The truck tent was already up. Harper lay with one leg hooked over Ethan's hip, her foot brushing a half-empty bottle of Gatorade and a Rogue sparkler stick. The truck creaked. Each time they shifted part lullaby, part warning. They laughed. Low and lazy, heat-drowsy and half-naked. The flap of the tent hung open just enough to catch the blinking blue glow of the Walmart sign. Across the lot, Someone's car alarm chirped to life, then died just as quickly like it had second thoughts. They didn't care. They had their own little world inside those canvas walls. Ethan reached over, fingers grazing her thigh like a soft fuse. "Hey," he said. "You think next summer we'll still be doing this? Sleeping in truck tents and selling explosives with sexually confusing names?" "Yeah." She didn't answer right away. A semi rumbled by on the highway. A hot breeze slipped through the flap like it had somewhere better to be. "I hope so," she finally said. "I like being a fire hazard with you." He kissed her shoulder. "Then let's burn slow." Outside, the night was heavy with stars. Somewhere in the distance, old country music spilled from a cracked car window. Inside the tent, they curled around each other like smoke, dreaming in colors that didn't have names yet. Then a bottle rocket popped in the distance, just one, like a punctuation mark no one asked for. Then silence again, broken only by the hum of the Walmart sign and the occasional squeak of shopping cart wheels moving without a pusher. Harper shifted, her knee brushing his. "You know what I love?" she murmured. "We sleep in a parking lot next to hundreds of pounds of Class C explosives, and I've never felt safer." Ethan smiled. "That's because we're the dangerous ones." Their laughter tangled with the night, soft, wild, unbothered, tangled up in one another. Just two bodies, half-burned and hopeful. Beside a fireworks tent in a Walmart parking lot, the sky above them stretched wide and bruised with stars. Tomorrow there would be sales and sunburns. Someone would ask if pink smoke bombs came in blue. Maybe the fire marshal would stop by. But for now, the world was still. And inside their little tent, the fire hadn't gone out yet. Chapter 14. The Shift. Sometimes, love doesn't leave with a storm. Sometimes, it slips out the back door quiet, unnoticed, until the house feels colder, and you can't remember when it started. Harper, the fireworks tent had come down, but summer didn't quit. They kept camping, dancing, holding each other, loving endlessly. Then came the cabin. They called it the Redneck Retreat. It wasn't much more weathered shack than getaway. No insulation. A crooked porch. Two old cots with springs that groaned if you breathed too hard. The shower was just a hose behind a curtain strung between two trees, spitting cold water like it resented you. They shivered under it, laughing like teenagers. It was perfect. Cards were played by the flicker of a battery lantern. The game unraveled into dares and impressions. They filmed silly videos, pretending to hear something outside, overacting like a no-budget horror flick. "This is how every true crime podcast starts," Harper whispered, panning the camera across Ethan's face as he tiptoed toward the trees, flashlight in one hand, spatula in the other. That night, they made love in the back hatch of the car, windows fogged from breath and heat. Afterward, drenched in sweat and smiles, they climbed out. Every now and then, Harper glanced over not because Ethan said something funny, but like she was trying to memorize the shape of the moment. "You okay?" Ethan asked, catching her gaze. She nodded. "I just like you best like this," she said. "Before the world gets in." She whispered stories, traced his ribs with her fingers. "I want to remember this," she murmured. He kissed her shoulder. "You will." Then she sat up, reached for her phone. "Hold on." Thumbs tapping, brow furrowed. Then she handed it to him. "I don't want the memory of your hands to become an ache I can't name. I don't want this kind of good to become just another story I tell when it rains." Ethan stared at the screen, then at her. "Did you write this just now?" She nodded. He tucked her hair behind her ear. "That's the most beautiful thing anyone's ever written about me. I meant every word." And in that moment, he believed her. But slowly, the rhythm changed. Months after the trip, Ethan began to drift. He struggled to find where he fit. Took odd jobs painting fences, helping a buddy with roofing, whatever paid. Some weeks were lean. He started sleeping in, scrolling too long on his phone, withdrawing without meaning to. Once a flame. Now, mostly smoke. Harper tried to hold it all together. Still smiling. Still making dinner. Still pulling him into hugs. But she was tired. Sometimes quiet. Her laugh no longer filling the room the way it used to. They still loved fiercely, but their moments began to shrink. One night, Harper sat alone at the kitchen table. Ethan was out with a new friend he'd met through work. She missed his laugh, missed his hands on her waist while she stirred pasta, missed feeling like a song he danced to. Later, she asked softly, "Are you happy here?" He didn't answer right away. His eyes dropped to the floor, then back to her. He kissed her like a question and said, "I'm happy with you." There were still good nights. They took long drives, windows down, music loud, lying on the hood of the truck, watching stars, remembering fireworks, camper, cabin. But in bed, one night, she reached for him, and he flinched. Not away, but not toward her either. Not rejection, just absence. One evening, she found him sitting on the back steps, beer in hand. She hadn't known he was drinking again. "You okay?" she asked gently. He didn't look at her, just thinking. She sat beside him, knees brushing. "About what?" He shrugged. "Whether I'm still the guy you fell for, or just some version of him trying to catch up." She reached for his hand. "You're still him." But her voice trembled just enough to make the silence ring louder. And that was it. The first real crack in the glass. Thin, hairline, but spreading. They held each other tighter after that, like lovers afraid of waking from a dream. But something had shifted. Subtle, invisible, real. The kind of shift that starts not with shouting, but silence. Not with slammed doors, but missed glances. Not with betrayal, but with time. And though neither of them could say it out loud, a quiet fear curled in the spaces between their "I love yous." What if the fire that brought us together isn't enough to keep us warm? Chapter 15. The Fraying. We didn't shatter. We unraveled thread by thread, kiss by kiss, until love became something we remembered more than something we lived. Harper. By October, the heat had broken, but so had something between them. The nights arrived earlier, sunlight thinning across the floorboards like breath on glass. Outside, dry leaves scraped the sidewalk, whispering reminders that nothing stays green forever. Inside, the house held a low, creeping chill. Not enough to see your breath, but enough to wrap around your ankles and settle in your bones. Ethan was working with a guy named Jace, now a loudmouth with a sharp grin and a gift for turning every Friday into a reason to drink. At first, it was harmless. A few beers in the garage, radio humming, door cracked open to the dark. Then came late-night bonfires in empty fields. Whiskey passed around like communion. Flames too high. Laughter too loud. Jace was chaos disguised as charm. And Ethan didn't know when he started needing the noise. Harper noticed the shift almost immediately. Ethan spent more time with Jace than with her. More drinking, more silence, more retreat. At first, he told himself it was temporary. A phase. Just something to take the edge off. But guilt doesn't dull. It digs deeper. He began coming home later. His kisses were off, not cold, just absent. His eyes, once wide and full of her, looked half-shuttered now, like the blinds had been drawn but never opened again. Their rhythm cracked in quiet places. She'd finish work and find him slumped on the couch, surrounded by empties. The house smelled different now. Beer. Sweat. Cold takeout forgotten in the trash. "Rough day?" she'd ask, arms folded across her chest, bare feet against tile. He'd grunt, shrug, maybe offer a crooked smile that never quite reached his eyes. And somewhere inside, part of him resented her for asking, for noticing, for seeing what he didn't want to name. Not because of her, never because of her, but because he didn't have the words. How do you say, "Every day I feel further from the man I was supposed to be, from the man I promised you"? He used to dream about mornings with her. Now, even next to her, he felt far away, like they were living in parallel close enough to brush shoulders, but never fully touching. She missed the way he used to look at her, like she was made of starlight. Now, he looked through her, like the sky had gone dull. They still shared a bed, still touched, sometimes moved together under the covers like echoes of a habit. But it felt like searching in the dark for something already gone. He touched her like a man looking for his keys after the lights go out. She held him like she could pull him back from wherever he kept drifting. One night, he came home late, half drunk. Shoes kicked off at the door. She sat up in bed, blanket clutched around her. "I'm scared I'm losing you," she whispered. He blinked, slow and tired. The ceiling fan spun lazy circles above them. "I'm right here." "No," she said. "You're not." He rolled away. "You worry too much." And then the crack, just beneath her voice. Small, splintering. He heard it, felt it. Part of him hated her for being right. But more than that, he hated himself for not knowing how to stop it. He wanted to say, "I'm scared too, that I've already failed, that you'll wake up and see I'm not a fire, just smoke." But he said nothing, and let her ache in silence beside him. She started writing again, late at night. Poetry mostly. Lines about drifting orbits and missed connections. "We share the same moon, but never collide. I feel you in the mirror, but not in the room." She curled on the couch, blanket pulled to her knees, tea cooling on the table beside her. The lamplight wrapped her in soft gold. The rest of the room stayed dark. She didn't show him the poems. Not anymore. She remembered when he used to trace stars across her back with his fingers. Now, he didn't even see the sky. Sometimes, in the mornings, he'd wrap his arms around her from behind while she made coffee, rest his chin on her shoulder, breathe her in like ritual. "I love you," he'd murmur. She'd close her eyes. "Then fight for me." But he didn't know how. Or maybe he did and just didn't want to anymore. Each time she said it, he felt like a fraud. Because what she didn't see was that he was fighting, just not in the way she needed. He was fighting the voice that said he wasn't enough. Fighting the shame that curled in his chest like smoke. Fighting the fear that he'd already ruined everything. So instead of pulling closer, he drifted further. Because it felt easier to disappoint her quickly than to stretch it out over months of slow decay. Then, one gray Saturday, she walked into the living room and found him asleep on the couch. Mouth open, head tilted, a crushed beer can resting on his chest. 2 more on the floor, 1 on the windowsill. The TV glowed with the blue light of a paused screen. The room was dim, the blinds drawn like an afterthought. She stood still. The only sound was the fridge humming quietly in the kitchen. She took a step, reached out, then let her hand drop. There was no use waking what wouldn't rise. She turned and walked back down the hall, floorboards cold beneath her heels. Too tired for shouting, too tired for saving. And in that moment, she knew. She was the only one still trying. He didn't feel her standing there, didn't hear her walk away. But when he woke to a quiet house and the faintest trace of lavender trailing through the hallway air, he knew. Something sacred had slipped between them. Not shattered, just spilled. And this time, he wasn't sure there was enough left to gather. Still, he said nothing. Because sometimes, the heaviest words are the ones you're afraid won't be forgiven. Chapter 16. The Break. Some love ends in flames. Ours ended in silence, the kind that echoes louder than goodbye. Harper. The day it ended, it didn't explode. It folded in on itself like a star going dark. Harper had spent the morning working, cleaning, doing the laundry, playing a game on her phone. Things she didn't care about. Pretending her heart wasn't unraveling behind every keystroke. She made them both breakfast, but Ethan hadn't touched it. He'd mumbled something about being tired and gone back to bed with a headache and a beer on the nightstand. She folded socks she'd never wear again and wiped counters that didn't need cleaning. Outside, the wind stirred a chime they'd hung together months ago. Its soft, hollow clinking sounded like grief pretending to be music. By noon, she sat at the kitchen table, staring out the window, hearing only the hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of the wall clock. And something inside her broke. She walked into the bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed. He stirred, groaned, cracked open one bloodshot eye. "You okay?" he mumbled. "No," she said quietly. He blinked at her, confused. "I can't do this anymore, Ethan." He sat up, rubbing his face. "What are you talking about?" "This," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "Us. Me pretending you're still here when you're not. Watching you drink yourself further and further away from me. I feel like I'm screaming underwater." Something in him froze. He'd known it was coming. felt the slow erosion beneath their days, the silence, the spaces, the aching hollowness between touches. But still, hearing her say it aloud cracked something open. He wanted to argue, to tell her she was wrong, that he was still here. But he wasn't sure that was true anymore. And the worst part was, a small voice inside whispered, "She deserves to leave. And you don't deserve to stop her." He swung his legs off the bed. "So what, you're just giving up?" "I gave everything," she said. "I held on when you stopped showing up. When you stopped looking at me the way you used to. When you started choosing beer over conversation, I held on longer than I should have. I bent until I didn't recognize my own shape. But pain has teeth. And sometimes it bites the one person trying to love you back into yourself." What he meant was, I didn't know how to receive them. That her words made him feel too seen, too raw. That he read them in secret, sometimes, when she was asleep. That they broke him because they remembered the man he forgot how to be, but all he gave her was cruelty because it was easier than honesty. "I know," she whispered. "That's the problem." There was silence, just the sound of her heart pounding, of his shallow breaths, of love finally collapsing under its own weight. He stood, moved toward her, reached for her hand. She stepped back. He opened his mouth, the truth rising sharp and raw. "It was never about forgetting you, Harper. It was about forgetting the man I couldn't bear to be anymore. The one who failed you, the one who failed himself." But all that came out was silence. "I love you, Ethan," she said. "But I won't lose myself trying to hold on to someone who's already gone." His lips parted, but no words came. He wanted to tell her everything. That he loved her in a way that scared him. That he hated himself for the man he'd become in her orbit. That he never stopped hearing her laugh, even in the silence. That the beer wasn't about forgetting her, it was about forgetting the parts of himself that didn't feel worthy of being remembered. But the words jammed up in his throat like gravel. So he said nothing, and watched her slip further away. She packed while he sat on the porch, smoking in silence. Just a duffel bag, her laptop, a folder full of poems, the hoodie he used to wear when they danced in the kitchen. When she walked out the front door, she paused beside him. "I'll always be the girl who drove across states just to see your eyes in real life," she said. "But I can't be the girl who stays while you destroy yourself." He didn't look at her, just nodded. Once. He opened his mouth. 3 words stood on the edge of his tongue. But shame is a thick fog and he couldn't find his way through it. He thought if he didn't move, maybe she wouldn't either. That maybe she'd see how much he was hurting and come back inside. That maybe she'd touch his face and say it's not too late. But she didn't. And he couldn't. And maybe that was the cruelest kind of love, one that lets go so the other can breathe again. She waited a moment longer, hoping, praying, but he stayed still, so she turned and walked away. That night, Ethan sat alone in the silence, the emptiness pressing in from every corner of the house. The fairy lights still hung above the bed. One of her poems was still stuck to the fridge with a magnet. "You were lightning, and I was the field, and even after the burn I waited for you to strike again." His fingers trembled as they brushed the edge of the page, worn soft from time. He whispered the last line like a prayer. "I waited for you to strike again." He wanted the lightning back, but the storm had passed, and all that remained was the echo of her footsteps in a house that no longer felt like home. Chapter 17. Quantum Echoes. Some loves defy the laws of time, echoing across lifetimes, entangled beyond reason, resonant in every silence. A love like ours doesn't end. It becomes the echo eternity cannot quiet. Harper. Time had moved forward, but not in a straight line. They were like particles separated by space, but still entangled. Whatever one felt, the other mirrored, even across silence and states. For Ethan, it coiled in loops, tight, frustrating spirals of half-healing and pretending. After Harper left, the silence was louder than any argument could have been. He spent weeks in a fog, blaming her, then himself, then no one at all. He dated someone else for a while. Her name was Riley. She liked country fairs and never asked too many questions. She laughed at his jokes and didn't expect poetry. She was kind, easy, predictable, but she wasn't Harper. He wanted Riley to be enough, wanted to dissolve into her quiet steadiness. But every time she touched his hand, he remembered how Harper used to trace invisible shapes on his skin like she was writing love letters in Morse code. He kissed Riley and tasted absence. Meanwhile, Harper had left with a storm inside her. She spent countless nights unraveling in her bed. Silence screamed in her ears. She cried until her pillow was soaked, clutching one of Ethan's old shirts like a lifeline. She didn't tell anyone how much it hurt. She didn't know. How do you explain heartbreak when your soul meets its twin and loses it? There were days she could barely breathe. Nights when the pain felt too vast to survive, she reread their messages until the words blurred. She buried her face in his shirt when she missed his embrace. Even in a room full of friends, she felt alone. The world was colder without his warmth. She listened to "I am" affirmations and whispered his name into the wind, believing maybe foolishly that somehow he could still hear her. She lit candles, burned sage, read about soul contracts and karmic debt, clinging to the idea that some loves are written before birth and can't be erased by time or pain. Under the stars, she wept and begged the universe, "Return him to me, or release me from him." And slowly, through all the pain, she began to write again. Poems of loss, of healing, of hope. Words became her sanctuary, the one place where she could speak to him without breaking. Meanwhile, Ethan was unraveling in a different way. He filled the hollow with alcohol, with a woman he didn't love, and with feelings he didn't know how to name. He thought if he numbed everything, the memories would fade. But memories don't die in silence. They echo louder. He avoided the music she used to play, avoided poems, avoided mirrors, because in every reflection, he saw the man she once believed in, and the one he'd failed to become. And still, there were moments when her voice drifted into his mind, soft, steady, haunting. Moments when he swore he could feel her, like static in the air, like a whisper between worlds. One night, Ethan looked up at the moon and whispered her name, not knowing that across the miles, Harper did the same and the wind stirred around them both at the same time. They were apart, building themselves back from the wreckage of what they once shared. But what neither of them knew was that the thread hadn't broken. It had stretched, aching but unyielding, and the farther it's pulled, the stronger the return. Some loves don't end. They echo in eternity, waiting to collide again. Chapter 18. The Ripple. Love doesn't always vanish. Sometimes it just whispers, waiting for the right moment to be heard again. Harper. It started slowly. A message. "Hey, how are you?" Then silence. A song followed a week later. Another. Some days after that. No expectations, no explanations. Just drops in still water, echoing softly between them. Ethan never asked for more. Harper never gave too much. Still, they kept writing brief flickers of contact, like the universe was speaking in Morse code through their fingertips. A message, a silence, a photo, another silence. Each one stretched like a ripple across the months, quiet but steady. Sometimes their exchanges were light-hearted. Ethan would send her a photo of his dog, sprawled across the couch with one leg stuck straight in the air, nose buried in a throw pillow. "Pretty sure she owns the house now," he texted. Harper replied with a picture of her own dog sitting upright at the dinner table. Posture formal, gaze regal. "He's ready to rule the world," she wrote. "Or at least this casserole." Other times, the messages took on a softer tone. Ethan once wrote, "Remember that night near the Kansas line? Route 66? Lying in the middle of the road?" Of course she remembered. The weight of his hand in hers, the hum of cicadas all around them, the kiss that tasted like stardust and grass. She sent back a photo of that same sky, stars scattered thick above the trees like shy confessions. "I think about it more than I should," she said. Their connection became a thread they both tugged at when they didn't know what else to do. They shared pictures of late-night cravings, half-eaten cookies, and takeout boxes. Inside jokes that still made sense even after all that time. He sent her songs that sounded like them haunted, raw, unfinished. She responded with lyrics that read like secrets. And sometimes, there was nothing. A week. 2. The silence never felt final. It was just another part of the rhythm. The heart, after all, remembers its beat even when the words fall away. It happened on a Saturday, late May. One of those bright afternoons when the wind smells like childhood and cut grass. Ethan stood in his driveway shirtless, flipping burgers on the grill. Smoke curled up into a cloudless sky. He hadn't planned to reach out, hadn't rehearsed it, but the ache low, familiar, stirred something in him. Without thinking, he typed, "I'm making burgers if you want one." He stared at the screen. A few seconds later, the typing bubble appeared, then disappeared, then returned. Finally, "Yeah, I'd like that." Harper drove with her windows down, the song he'd sent the week before spilling through her speakers. The wind tossed her hair into her face. Her heart, louder than the music, climbed into her throat and stayed there, fluttering. By the time she turned onto his road, her breath was shaky. In her chest sat something fragile and familiar. He stood out front waiting, a dish towel slung over one shoulder. He didn't smile, didn't move, just watched. She got out slowly. Their eyes met across the stretch of driveway nearly 3 years. 2 bruised hearts, and one shared ache between them. The world didn't erupt. It paused. Time folded. A single heartbeat seemed to stretch wide, filled with everything they hadn't said. "Hey," Ethan said. And somehow, that one word carried all the weight of the past. Harper's lips parted. She had imagined this moment in every possible form, the cinematic reunion, the angry confrontation, the awkward silence. But this? This was just stillness. "Hey," she echoed. They stood there, letting the quiet speak. The scent of charred meat drifted in the breeze. A basketball bounced somewhere down the street. A bird called once, then again. "How've you been?" he asked, though he could already read it in her eyes. "Some good days," she said. "Some not so good," he nodded. "Same." A breeze passed between them, warm with memory. Then, without warning, Harper tilted her head and asked, "Dance with me?" He didn't question it, just stepped closer. Their movements were slow, unthinking. His arms circled her waist. Her hands slid around his neck. Her head settled against his chest. He pressed play on his phone, and soft music spilled into the air. They didn't so much dance as sway, barely moving, still but not still. His thumb traced light circles on her lower back. Her eyes closed as she breathed in the smell of cedarwood and charcoal, and something that had always been him. They said nothing. They didn't need to. Eventually, she pulled back, nudging a pebble with the toe of her shoe. "I should go," she murmured, though she didn't move. Ethan shifted, just slightly. "It's really good to see you." Harper's throat tightened. So many things she could say, so many truths she might confess, but instead, she just nodded. "Yeah, you too." Then, without thinking, they moved again. One step forward, and then another into each other. They embraced without hesitation. A long, solid hug. Not desperate, not uncertain, just right. Like their bodies remembered how to speak us. She breathed him in. He closed his eyes. No words. She stepped away first, soft, slow. He felt it like the tide pulling away from the shore. She got back into her car. One last look passed between them. Then she was gone. Ethan stayed there in the driveway long after her taillights disappeared, hands in his pockets. The air still thick with her presence. Not quite a beginning, not quite an ending. Just something suspended, alive, moving, like a ripple that never stopped. Chapter 19. The Pull. It wasn't gravity that drew me back, it was something older. Something that remembered the shape of his mouth before memory did. Harper. They'd been texting off and on all week. Nothing heavy, nothing definitive, just the kind of messages that fill a silence before it becomes too loud. Late-night check-ins. A meme here. A remember this? Photo there. The kind of thread that never snapped, just stretched. Sunday morning. The ache crept in again. Harper stood outside, the heat of the sun against her skin. She didn't want to overthink it. She didn't want to sit with the what-ifs for another day. She texted, "You home?" Ethan's reply came quick. "On the porch. No questions, No hesitation. 10 minutes later, she was pulling into his driveway. He was exactly where he said, shirt sleeves rolled, beer in hand, seated on the steps like he'd been waiting without meaning to. Harper stepped out slowly. There was no takeout. No flowers. Just her hair loose, heartbeat wild, keys still dangling in her fingers. "Hey," she said. Ethan looked up, and the sunlight caught the edges of him familiar and unreadable. "Hey," he answered. They talked a while about life and music. "Mind if I come in? I have to pee," she added, with a half-laugh that didn't quite land. He smiled just enough. "Of course." Harper disappeared down the hall. Ethan stood in the kitchen, back to the sink, fingers curled around the counter like it might ground him. He wasn't sure why his pulse picked up. Maybe because it had been so long since she'd walked through that door without a reason. When she came out of the bathroom, the light from the window cut across her face like moonlight through clouds. She didn't say anything. Neither did he. But something moved between them, quiet and magnetic. They stepped toward each other in perfect sync. Not fast, not slow, just inevitable. No speech, no build-up. Just her hand brushing his arm, his hand lifting to her face. And then, finally, the kiss. It wasn't explosive. It was home. A meeting of mouths that knew the way. That had been here before, but longed for the reminder. Her hands slid up his chest. His fingers threaded into her hair. The kiss deepened, lingering, careful, but not unsure. When they broke apart, it wasn't with regret. It was with breathless quiet. Harper rested her forehead against his, their bodies still close, still humming. Because whatever it was between them, it wasn't over. Not yet. Maybe not ever. They stood like that for a long time, neither speaking, neither moving, just being. Harper felt it in her bones, the quiet thrum of something ancient remembering its shape inside her. It wasn't fear. It wasn't confusion. It was recognition. She finally opened her eyes, still resting against his forehead. Neither of them stepped back. Harper's hands were still resting against Ethan's chest, and his thumb was gently stroking the curve of her jaw like it had every right to be there. The kiss still hovered between them, its heat, its gravity. And now that she'd tasted him again, she didn't want to stop. Not yet. Not for a while. Her breath caught as he leaned in just slightly. His forehead against hers. Their noses brushed. He didn't push, but his body was saying what his mouth hadn't. "I want you." And God, she wanted him too. The kind of want that curled low in her belly and bloomed outward. The kind of want that wasn't just lust, but history, trust, ake, familiarity. It wasn't just about getting lost in each other, it was about finding each other again. In skin, in sound, in sweat and breath and fire. "I still think about you," Harper whispered, her voice trembling at the edges. "Your hands, your mouth, the way we moved like we already knew how." Ethan's eyes darkened. His hand dropped to her waist, pulling her closer, slowly, like he didn't trust himself not to ruin it if he rushed. "I dream about you," he murmured, lips brushing her cheek, her temple. "Still wake up reaching for your body like it never left mine." A shaky exhale left her lips. She was already burning. "I shouldn't want this as much as I do," she said, voice barely audible. "But you do," he answered. She nodded. His hand slid down the curve of her back, firm and reverent, like he was reacquainting himself with sacred ground. She pressed her forehead to his chest, gripping the hem of his shirt like it might anchor her. "We can stop," he said, but his voice cracked a little. "I don't want to stop," she said, mouth against his collarbone. "I just don't want it to be only that." He lifted her chin, gently, until their eyes met. "It's never just that with you," he said. "You know that." Then another kiss, deeper this time, hotter, less question, more need. His hands at her hips, her fingers in his hair, their bodies moving in closer and closer circles, as if pulled by something older than wants something like recognition. But just before the flame could take, Harper pressed a hand to his chest, not to stop him, to steady herself. "I should go," she whispered. He swallowed hard. Yeah, but neither moved, because their bodies were already humming in sync again, their hearts pressing through skin and silence. And as she pulled back, slowly, gently, Ethan caught her hand. His thumb traced a slow line across her wrist. "This isn't over," he said, low and certain. Her voice cracked when she whispered, "I hope not." Then she stepped out the door, heart pounding, skin lit up like it remembered every place his hands used to go. Outside, the air wrapped around her like consequence. But she was already thinking about his mouth, his body, his yes, because some flames take time to rekindle, and some just need one kiss to burn the whole world open again. Chapter 20. The answer her soul had been asking. It wasn't the kiss that broke me. It was the part of me that remembered what it meant. Harper. She didn't mean to cry. But sometimes the body speaks before the mind has time to argue. Harper stood beneath the spray, too hot, too sharp, scalding down her back like it was trying to strip away more than dirt. The water hit her shoulders like truthfall. She braced her hands against the tile, head bowed, steam curling around her like silence, trying to smother something tender. The mirror was already fogged, but she wouldn't have looked anyway. She didn't want to see the expression on her face, what grief and hope look like when they try to live in the same mouth. Her chest ached. Not the soft kind, not the poetic kind, the kind that pulsed, deep and raw, the kind that still knew the shape of his hands. She'd been alone since him, not just single, untouched. No one else had made it past her skin. No one else had fit the rhythm of her body without needing instruction. She hadn't let anyone else try. Because there was only one person who ever made her feel like her breath had a place to land. And tonight, after that kiss, her body remembered everything. The way they used to move like they were made to tangle, to ache, to burn into one shape and not apologize for it. She wanted to run back, wanted to bury herself in him, to feel the rhythm of them again, to make love not just to forget the world, but to remember who they were inside it, to wrap herself around him until the silence broke, until the ache gave way to fire, to sweat, to skin pressed against skin like the answer to a question her soul had been asking. But she didn't. She dropped to her knees instead, water pounding against her skin, hair clinging to her cheeks, salt mixing with heat until she couldn't tell where the tears stopped and the shower began. That kiss, God, it had tasted like memory, like home, like a beginning she'd tried to talk herself out of wanting. But now, she wasn't sure she'd survive wanting it again. Because what if it was just another spark, a beautiful flash before the power goes out again? What if she let him back in and he drifted again? Fell into silence? Forgot how to see her the way he once did? She pulled her knees to her chest, forehead pressed to them, the hum of the pipes a lullaby for the wreckage inside her. She wanted to be mad, to be stronger, to be finished. But she wasn't. She was still his, still aching with a love she didn't know how to let go of, still trembling from a hope she didn't know how to trust. She stayed there a long time, long enough for the water to go lukewarm, long enough for her breath to settle, long enough for the sobs to stop even if the ache didn't. When she finally stood, her legs trembled not from weakness, but from the weight of everything unspoken between them. She shut off the water, wrapped herself in a towel, and stood in the fogged mirror, staring at her own blurry outline. Somewhere inside her, something had cracked, but not in the way she feared. Not destruction, not collapse, just space, a widening, a breath. And beneath it, quiet but present, something glowing, not just longing, possibility. Chapter 21. Embers. Twin flames are not always ablaze. Sometimes they are embers hidden in shadow, waiting for the winds of fate to awaken their eternal fire. Harper. It was Harper who suggested the camping trip, not with boldness, but with a quiet message. Harper, remember that cabin we stayed in with the outside shower? Thought you might want to disappear with me for a couple days. Ethan stared at the screen. His heart tightened, but not from fear. He typed back, "Ethan, I'd disappear with you anywhere." The rain kept them inside, flickering candlelight dancing across the wooden walls. Harper curled up on the cot, knees drawn in, and Ethan sat cross-legged on the floor, their shared laughter filling the small space as the card game dragged on into the night. When she threw a card at him and he pretended it pierced his heart, she laughed so hard she choked on her soda. He climbed onto the bed beside her, closer than he needed to be, and for a moment, just a breath, they stared at each other. Neither moved. Neither spoke of it, but something unspoken settled into the air, warm and waiting. That morning, Ethan caught a glimpse of Harper stepping from the outdoor shower, wrapped in a towel, skin flushed from the cold, droplets trailing down her legs. She didn't hide, didn't rush, just walked across the clearing like she belonged in the wilderness, sunlight dusting her shoulders like a secret. He swallowed hard, looked away, and tried to focus on the fire pit, but his hands shook slightly. Later, they swam in the lake cold enough to steal their breath. She shrieked as he lifted her in the water, arms around his neck, their faces inches apart. Her legs brushed his under the surface. That night, when they sat shoulder to shoulder under the stars, Harper reached for his hand. Not gently, not uncertainly, deliberately. He squeezed back. She leaned into him. And then, finally, she turned her face to his and said, "I don't want to wait anymore," and kissed him. It started soft, familiar, aching, but quickly deepened. His hands found her waist, pulled her onto his lap. She straddled him in the blanket, breath shallow against his cheek, her fingers slipping into his hair. He whispered her name into the hollow beneath her ear, and she shivered. They didn't make it to the cot right away. All that waiting, all that carefulness had to go somewhere. There, in the fire's glow, Harper pulled off her sweatshirt, and Ethan touched her like she was both something sacred and something he remembered with every cell in his body. His mouth traced the curve of her neck, the line of her collarbone, the places he'd missed most. Her hands gripped his shirt, fingers twisting the fabric, then sliding beneath it. When they finally moved inside, they undressed slowly, carefully. Nothing rushed. Every button, every breath, was deliberate, like reopening a book they had loved once and never quite finished reading. Their bodies fit together the way their souls always had, like gravity, like home. They made love with quiet reverence, with pauses to look each other in the eyes, to smile, to remember. No apologies, no promises, just presence. After, they lay tangled in the blankets, skin still warm, hearts pounding like echoes of all they hadn't said yet. She woke before him, sunlight catching in the edges of his lashes. She studied his face softer in sleep and traced a slow line across his chest with her fingertip. Ethan stirred and caught her hand, kissing her knuckle without opening his eyes. "I dreamt you were mine again," he murmured. "You never really stopped being," she whispered. They didn't get dressed for hours. Between cups of coffee and bare skin beneath blankets, they touched more, sometimes with heat, sometimes with aching slowness. He kissed every freckle on her shoulder. She ran her tongue along his jawline and said she remembered exactly how he used to taste. He grinned, pulled her under him, and kissed her until the world fell quiet again. Their last day was slower, softer, but filled with unspoken knowing. She wore one of his flannels as they packed. He watched her wash her hair at the outdoor sink and thought, "This is the woman I've loved in 1,000 quiet ways." They didn't say what it meant, didn't promise forever. They hugged before she got into her car, a long, lingering moment, just holding one another. She kissed him softly on the mouth. When he pulled back, he rested his forehead against hers and whispered, "Tell me this isn't the end." She looked up at him, eyes bright and steady. "It's not," she said. "It's just the beginning." She drove home with the windows cracked, letting the cool air whip through her hair. The road stretched like a ribbon, each mile taking her farther from the cabin but not from him. Not this time. The scent of cedar still clung to her skin. Her muscles ached in quiet, pleasant ways, and beneath it all was a hum she hadn't felt in a long time, not adrenaline, not fear, something older, something steady. She had touched the past, but it hadn't broken her. She'd let him touch her, see her, hold her without the weight of everything they'd once lost, pressing down on them. And somehow, it hadn't undone her. It had rooted her. The cabin hadn't just been a place to disappear. It had been a place to remember. Not just who they were, but who they still might be. She thought about the way Ethan had whispered her name in the dark, the way his fingers had threaded through hers like they belonged there. the way he hadn't rushed her, the way they'd moved together like a song they still knew how to sing, and the way, when she looked at him now, she didn't just see the boy who broke her heart. She saw the man who had stayed present, stayed kind, stayed open, even when the air between them buzzed with ghosts. It scared her how easily she could fall again. But maybe it wasn't falling this time. Maybe it was returning, coming back to something that never really let go. And in that quiet, as the trees blurred past her window and the world reassembled itself, Harper made peace with a single truth. Whatever came next, she wasn't afraid to feel it, because love wasn't a fire she feared getting burned by anymore. It was an ember, glowing, breathing, waiting, and she was finally ready to see what it might become. He stayed just long enough to sweep the ashes, fold the blankets, and run his hand along the old wooden doorway, long enough to feel the silence without her in it. The cabin wasn't just a place. It was a pause button, a breath between what they had been and what they might still be. He stood at the edge of the lake and let the wind hit his face, clean and sharp. The sky was clear again. The same sky they'd looked up at 2 nights ago. Her hand in his, their bodies warm beneath a blanket of stars. He could still feel the echo of her skin against his, the way she'd looked at him not with regret, but with trust. That reached deeper than anything else. She trusted him again, not with everything, but with enough. Not with everything, but with something. Enough to be close. Enough to sleep beside him with her guard lowered. Enough to laugh with him like the old days. Enough to kiss him slowly like it meant something because it did. Every moment they'd shared in the cabin felt like stitching, mending what had been torn, but not erasing the seams. The hurt didn't vanish. The past didn't rewrite itself. But for the first time, he didn't feel like he had to outrun it to be worthy of her. He was still a work in progress. Still learning how to stay when things got hard. Still figuring out how to show up not just in moments of clarity, but in the mess, too. But this time, he hadn't run. He'd held her. Not just with his hands, but with his presence. And he knew down to his bones that mattered. The road back to her heart wasn't paved with grand gestures. It was made of quiet things. Bologna and card games. Burnt sausages and stars. A touch. A breath. A whispered goodnight. He took one last look at the water, then turned toward the car. Whatever came next, he'd be ready for it. Because for the first time in a long time, he didn't just want to love her. He wanted to love her right. Chapter 22. The in-between. It's like we lit the match but never touched the flame, just sitting here, warm from the memory, scared of getting burned again. Harper. Harper slipped back into her life, like easing into an old hoodie, familiar, but stretched thin in places, a little off at the seams. Her mornings picked up rhythm. Coffee and Monster chaotic. Quick showers, deadlines and emails. But her phone buzzed more now. Ethan sent songs before she even finished her first cup, mellow acoustics. Old favorites. Lyrics that landed like inside jokes. "This one feels like us," he'd say. Then a link to some indie band with aching violins and lines that made her chest tighten. She'd listen on repeat while brushing her teeth, thumb hovering over replay. Sometimes she sent one back. "Track 4 made me cry. You're a menace." He'd reply with a laughing emoji and a one-line poem he probably didn't realize was a poem. Better tears than silence, right? They didn't talk about the cabin. Not directly, but it lingered in pauses before pressing send, in the 2 long replies, like he was rereading her words before answering. They weren't apart, but they weren't together either. Just tethered, still humming. Ethan's hands were rough again, building, sanding, lifting. But sometimes he'd pause mid-task, thumbs scrolling through old texts, back to the one where she said, "I felt safe." He kept the flannel in his truck. Not hers, his. The one she wore at the cabin. Still faintly shaped by her. Still smelling of her shampoo. He couldn't bring himself to wash it. Their chats became daily. Morning check-ins. Late-night musings. Saw a fox in the parking lot. Thought of you. Foxes are mystical. Like you. Sometimes, he almost asked, "What are we now?" But the words stayed stuck beneath his thumbs. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was respect. Maybe both. One night, Harper curled on the couch, wrapped in a blanket still scented with wood smoke. She typed the question 3 different ways. Do you ever think about what this means now? Are we going somewhere? Or just orbiting again? Is this real? Or just the afterglow? Delete. 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 She sent a meme instead. He replied with a laughing emoji. Then, I miss you in the spaces between jokes. And that almost wrecked her. Because it was true. The in-between had started to ache. The cabin had stirred something they couldn't pretend away. Now they lived in a suspended space charged with memory and possibility. But fragile. She wanted to ask what came next. He wanted to ask if she was ready. Neither of them did. Some nights, Harper wrote letters she never sent. Dear Ethan, I still feel your hands on me like echoes not haunting. Just reminders I still have skin, that I can be held without disappearing. I don't know what we're doing, but I think I'd rather stumble toward something with you than walk a straight line without you. She'd press her palm over the page, like sealing it. Try to sleep. It didn't always work. Ethan carried a pen now, jotted thoughts on napkins and receipts. You looked at me like I hadn't ruined anything. I've never wanted to protect something more. I still hear your laugh when it's quiet. That night under the stars, was it just a memory? Or did it become real again? He folded the scraps and shoved them into his glove box, as if hiding the words kept them safer. One weekend, Harper almost called. She stood in the kitchen, thumb hovering over his name. The photo popped up Ethan in flannel, windblown, squinting like he didn't know how to look at the camera. She hit call. 1 ring. 2 hung up before it connected. Her phone buzzed. Hey, everything okay? She stared. Typed. I just wanted to hear your voice. Deleted it. Typed. I miss you tonight. Deleted again. Finally. Yeah. Just burned my toast. Classic. 3 dots. Then nothing. Then, you always burn the toast. Some things never change. But I still miss the smell of your kitchen. She smiled. And ached. Later that week, Ethan sat alone in his truck, rain tracing slow lines on the windshield. Engine running, phone in hand, scrolling. Somewhere between the fox emoji and a playlist called Almost But Not Quite, it hit him. They were pretending not to be in love again. Only now, they knew better. He typed, "What are we doing?" Paused. Deleted. "Are you as scared as I am?" Deleted again. Her message came first. "Just heard our song at the gas station. The one from the fireworks stand. Almost cried by the slushy machine." His chest clenched. "We have too many songs." "No," Harper replied. "Just one story. Told in a bunch of melodies." Still writing it? 3 dots. Stopped. Blinked again. She flipped back to the folded page in her journal. Finally. Finished the thought. Maybe the in-between was just the space we needed to remember we still fit just differently now. She took a photo. Sent it. Seconds passed. Ethan, you always did know how to end a chapter. And maybe, just maybe, how to start a new one. This time, no one deleted their message. No one ran. The flame they'd feared? It didn't burn this time. It warmed. Chapter 23. The Falls. They'd talked about this place back when the world felt wider and love felt simpler, just coordinates on a map and daydreams stitched together by signal bars and long-distance longing. A waterfall buried deep in the woods. Unmarked trail. No cell service. Just sky and stone and water that never stopped falling. Ethan remembered Harper calling it magic. Harper remembered Ethan saying, "Let's go, someday." Now, someday had come. 3 days and nights in the place they once only imagined. They parked on the edge of a gravel shoulder and hiked in with nothing but backpacks, water bottles, and a tangle of words neither of them had yet found the courage to say. It wasn't far, but the trail wound like a story they hadn't finished, telling roots snaring their boots, birds quieting as they passed, the air thick with pine and something unspoken. Harper walked ahead, glancing back now and then with that crooked smile that used to undo him. Ethan followed, letting her set the pace. The falls weren't vast or towering, but they looked like something out of a dream, a silver veil draped over ancient stone, shimmering like starlight caught in motion. Mist curled in soft spirals at the base, rising like breath from the earth. The pool beneath shimmered with hints of blue and green, clear as glass and cold as truth. Wildflowers nodded along the banks like they'd been waiting for someone to arrive. I used to imagine this, she said, her voice barely louder than the water. You and me here, back when everything felt too far away. Ethan came up beside her. I imagined it too, he said. I just didn't know how much we'd have to survive to get here. They sat on a sun-warmed rock. Their arms touched. Neither pulled away. A dragonfly zipped past. Somewhere, a bird called once and fell silent. For a long while, they just listened to the water. I brought the notebook, Harper said softly, unzipping her bag. Ethan raised an eyebrow. The one from after the cabin? She nodded. It's mostly a mess. Half poems. Letters I didn't send. He leaned back on his hands. Same. You brought yours? Ethan shrugged, sheepish. It's in the truck. Glovebox poetry. She laughed. A soft, real laugh that vibrated through his ribs. Glovebox poetry. That's such a you thing. He smiled. Maybe. But you're the reason I started writing again. Their eyes held a second too long. Then Harper opened her notebook. I wrote something about this place, she said. Before I ever saw it. She flipped to the page, breath catching on memory. Somewhere, a waterfall waits for us, where time will pause, where the echoes won't hurt, where love can catch its breath and try again. Ethan stared at the page. I wrote something like that too, he said. Want to hear? Harper nodded. He picked up a flat stone, rolling it between his palms. It wasn't a poem, just a thought. He looked out at the water. If we ever make it to that waterfall, he said slowly, I'll know it wasn't just a phase. It wasn't just the cabin. It was you. It's always been you. Harper blinked, heart stuttering. I almost called you that night. The one I burned my toast. I know, he said. I almost asked you to come back the night after. They sat in the hush, their missed moments rippling between them. I used to think healing would feel like lightning, Harper said, eyes on the falls. But maybe it's more like this. A slow return. A soft kind of remembering. She hadn't known what to expect. That the waterfall might fix something. Name something. But all she felt was the quiet ache of something returned. Like the first deep breath after crying. Then Harper peeled off her shoes and stepped barefoot into the stream. It was cold. Sharp. Pure. She turned to him, grinning. You coming in? Ethan hesitated, then followed. They stood waist-deep in the pool. The waterfall behind them. The past like mist on their skin. He reached for her hand. She didn't flinch. I don't know what happens next, he said. But I don't want to keep writing this story alone. Then don't, she said. And maybe that was the beginning again. Not a grand gesture. Not fireworks. Just two people in a hidden place they once only dreamed of, saying the quiet things out loud, letting the water wash away the silence. They stood there, ankle deep in the icy pool, hands threaded together. The waterfall behind them roared like applause, but everything else went still. Ethan looked at her the way he had the first time she showed up on his porch, wind-chapped cheeks, eyes too honest to look away from. Only now, the knowing between them was deeper. No longer a question, no longer a spark. A slow, steady burn. Harper tucked a wet strand of hair behind her ear, eyes never leaving his. I used to wonder, she said, barely louder than the water, if we'd ever get this moment back. Ethan stepped closer. We never lost it, he said. It just paused. Their faces were inches apart now. And now? She whispered. His thumb brushed her cheek, still asking permission, still afraid to break the spell. Now I think I'm ready to press play again. She didn't answer with words. She leaned in. Their lips met softly like a memory surfacing. Not a beginning, but a return. Not rushed. No need to prove anything. Just the slow unfolding of a kiss that had waited through silence, through distance, through time. Her hands slid to his shoulders, his to the small of her back. They didn't pull each other closer because they were already there. When they finally parted, her forehead rested against his, both of them breathless. It still feels like home, she murmured. Ethan smiled. That's because it is. Above them, the waterfall kept falling. Around them, the forest held its breath. And between them, something moved quiet and certain. Chapter 24. Returning Light. The road back wound through early autumn, the trees still clinging to green with hints of gold. Harper's hand rested gently on Ethan's thigh, thumb tracing absent-minded circles through denim as soft music played beneath the hum of tires on pavement. Neither of them said much. There wasn't a need. They were carrying something delicate between them like light cupped in their palms. He glanced over at her, sunglasses perched on her nose, hair still slightly damp from their last kiss at the cabin. The glow hadn't faded. Not entirely. But it had softened into something steadier, like embers warming the chest instead of wildfire consuming it. She caught him looking and smiled. "What?" she asked, voice still mourning. "Rough. I just like you." Her smile widened, slow and sincere. "Good." They passed the tiny diner they used to joke about visiting someday. The one with the crooked sign and the promise of world-famous pie. She pointed it out through the window. Ethan nodded. "We should have stopped." "We will," she said. "Next time." At a scenic overlook, Harper asked him to pull over. She climbed out barefoot, gravel sticking to her soles, walking to the edge where the trees fell away into open sky. A breeze stirred her dress, and for a second, she looked like someone out of one of Ethan's dreams. Untouchable. Eternal. She took a crumpled receipt from her bag, scribbled something quickly, and handed it to him. He read, "Even the sky looked lonelier before you." He folded it carefully and tucked it into his wallet, behind his license. No words, just a look, a promise. When Harper stepped back into her apartment, the silence felt different now, less like loneliness, more like a pause between heartbeats. She found one of his socks tangled in her sheets. She pressed it to her face, breathing in the scent of pine and firewood. Across town, Ethan unpacked slowly, unsure where to put things. It felt wrong to just toss everything back into drawers like nothing had changed. Because everything had. He found a hair tie of hers in his backpack, and didn't even hesitate. He slipped it into his top drawer next to his poetry journal, like a sacred relic. That night, their texts were simple. "Harper, miss you already. Ethan, still feel you here." And they both stared at their screens a little longer than necessary, not needing replies, just each other's presence pressing through the digital quiet. Over the next week, they grew into a new rhythm. They video called while folding laundry, shared photos of burnt toast and lopsided grilled cheese, sent songs back and forth like little offerings. Harper sent a photo of a waterfall. "I'd like to go there with you one day." One afternoon, he sent her a voice note, a glove box poem he hadn't shared yet. His voice was low, shy around the edges. "You weren't the storm. You were the shelter. I just didn't know how to stay dry yet." Harper listened 3 times in a row. On the 4th, she cried. But not everything was golden. Harper had a rough day. The kitchen sink sprung a leak. Coffee spilled on her favorite shirt. Her head pounded. She didn't text Ethan for hours. When she finally looked at her phone, his message sat there, unread. "Ethan. Hey, everything okay?" She called him instead of replying. "Hey," she said softly. "Sorry I disappeared. Today was just a lot." His voice was careful. "I thought maybe I'd done something wrong." She exhaled. "You didn't. I promise." There was a pause. Not heavy, just real. "I guess part of me still expects things to fall apart," he admitted. "Me too," she said, "but that doesn't mean they will." And somewhere in the space between their breaths, the light began to return. That weekend, as the moon waxed over a quiet Friday, Ethan asked the question that had been stirring inside him since the cabin. "Come stay with me." Harper looked up from the book she was reading on her couch. "For how long?" "A week. Or 2. Or however long you want." She bit her lip. "Like real life? No cabins. No campfires. Just my messy room and your loud morning yawns." He paused. "And burgers on the grill." She laughed. "That sounds perfect, actually." And on the other end of the line, Ethan knew. This love wasn't just memory or magic anymore. It was real. It was showing up. It was returning light. Chapter 25. The Glass Cabin. The glass cabin was theirs for 3 nights. They had talked about this place long ago, and now, here they were. Night 1. They danced barefoot under the moonlight, the sound of the falls pulsing like a heartbeat in the distance. He lifted her onto a smooth boulder, and they swayed to the rhythm of the forest, their bodies melting into each other as if the earth had sculpted them to fit. They laughed. They cried. They loved fully, wildly, reverently. In the water beneath the falls, she traced the curve of his shoulder with her fingertips. "Do you remember when we thought this would never happen?" she whispered. "I remember thinking I'd ruined every chance," he said, kissing the inside of her wrist. "But the universe had other plans," she smiled. "Quantum entanglement, remember? Once souls are bound, they never truly part." That night, they made love slowly, fiercely, like they were reclaiming every lost moment. His hands knew the map of her. Her lips found every hidden ache in him. It wasn't just physical, it was spiritual. A reconnection of energy, a homecoming of the soul. After, wrapped in blankets beneath the stars, she lay on his chest. She traced a line across his heart. "I want to grow old with you." "We already have," he said, kissing her hair. "In every lifetime. This time, we just get to stay." The waterfall sang into the night. The mist glowed soft and silver in the moonlight. And in that enchanted stillness, two twin flames once torn apart by chaos and healing finally burned as one. Not in destruction this time, but in something rarer, divine peace. Day 1 morning rose quiet and golden. Sunlight spilled through the glass walls, painting the room in soft amber. The falls whispered in the distance, still flowing, still faithful like time had folded in on itself to let them begin again. Harper stirred first, her head on Ethan's chest, his arm around her like gravity. Outside, a deer stepped into the clearing, pausing to drink from the pool. She didn't move, just watched the world breathe. "Are you awake?" Ethan's voice was husky with sleep. "Mm-hmm," she murmured. "I had the strangest dream," he said, stretching beneath her. "I dreamed we didn't meet online. I just saw you at the falls one day, like you'd always been there. And I knew you." She smiled into his skin. "Maybe that's the version of us that never had to break." He kissed her forehead. "Or the one that always found its way back." They lay in silence, the kind that follows truth fully spoken and fully received. Eventually, Harper sat up, pulling the blanket with her. She reached for her notebook on the windowsill. "I wrote something last night," she said, "before we fell asleep." Ethan propped himself up, watching her. She flipped to the last page and read aloud. "Last night, I touched the version of myself that never stopped loving him. She wasn't angry. She wasn't afraid. She just whispered, 'It's okay now. You're safe. You're home.'" Ethan didn't speak. He just cupped her cheek and kissed her softly, reverently, with the weightlessness of a soul that had wandered too long and finally returned. Day 2. They woke slowly. No alarms, no plans. Just light, warmth, and the ache of rediscovered bodies. Ethan cooked breakfast shirtless, eggs sizzling in the cast iron, while Harper leaned against the counter, still wearing his flannel. She traced the constellation of freckles on his back with her eyes. "Is this what forever feels like?" she asked. He glanced back, that crooked grin in place. "If it involves bacon and you in my shirt, then yeah, pretty close." They ate on the porch, barefoot and tangled in mourning. At one point, Harper dipped her finger into her coffee and flicked it at him. "You did not just—" "Oh, I did." A splash war broke out coffee and water from the tin basin until Ethan had her hoisted over his shoulder, both breathless with laughter. "Put me down. Say you surrender." "Never!" He spun her once, then lowered her gently into a pile of quilts, both gasping and flushed with joy. Later, they hiked above the falls, past moss-covered stones and whispering pines. She picked wildflowers and tucked them behind his ear. He took pictures of her in the sunlight, claiming he was documenting proof of magic. By sundown, the world glowed gold. She lit candles. He built a fire. They curled together on the floor, the flames dancing across bare skin and slow smiles. That night, they made love again with laughter between kisses, fingers tracing slow promises, not out of urgency, but from a place of ease. as if every past version of them had waited for this exact unfolding. After, her head on his chest, she whispered, "I forgot it could feel like this." He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "That's because you forgot you deserved it." Day 3. The rain came. Gentle at first, then steady, turning the forest into a cathedral of green. They stayed in bed past noon, limbs tangled, trading secrets like teenagers. He read her the glove box poems, voice soft, uncertain. She traced the shape of his words on his arm. "I want to remember this," she murmured. "You will," he said. "We're writing it into our skin." They stepped into the storm, soaked in t-shirts and shorts, dancing barefoot in puddles, chasing each other through the dripping woods. He caught her waist, spun her, dipped her like a ballroom dancer. "Ethan," she laughed. "What?" He grinned. "No one's watching." She kissed him in the rain, hair wild, heart wide open. The storm had eased, but the rain lingered warm, steady, clinging to skin like breath. They stepped outside in soaked t-shirts and bare feet, laughing as puddles slapped up their calves. The trees shimmered. The air smelled like earth and electricity. He caught her wrist, spun her once, then pulled her hard into his chest. Their laughter collapsed into heat. Her hands slid up his spine. His mouth crashed into hers, wet, hungry, all teeth and need. She backed into the wall of the cabin, the cool glass shocking against her spine. He stripped her shirt first, slow, deliberate, eyes locked to hers like he could already feel her under his hands. She yanked his over his head in return, pressing their bare chests together, slick with rain and skin. They didn't speak. His mouth found her neck. Her nails raked his back. The rain beaded and rolled between them. He lifted her easily, her thighs wrapping tight around his waist, and pressed into her with a low growl, one hand braced on the glass, the other tangled in her hair. She gasped, biting down on his shoulder. He grunted, driving deeper. Their rhythm was rough, hungry, not reverent, instinctive, not slow, inevitable. She met him beat for beat, clawing at his hips, teeth on his jaw, their bodies moving like the rain had called them out of time. The sound of it, the slap of skin, the hiss of breath, the raw, feral rhythm of two people who had waited too long drowned out everything else. When she came, she did it with her head thrown back, mouth open to the storm. When he followed, it was with a guttural curse, her name ripped from his throat like a truth he'd been holding in for years. They stayed there, panting, shaking foreheads pressed, hands gripping, eyes closed. The rain kept falling. Their bodies cooled, but something deeper didn't soften, didn't fade. He pulled back just enough to look at her rain in her lashes, mouth bruised from kissing. "You okay?" he asked, voice hoarse. She nodded, still breathless, then grinned. "Again," she said, and in the rain, soaked dark, he smiled like a man who'd just found his reason for everything. That night, their last in the glass cabin, they lay beneath the stars quieter now, not from distance, but from depth. "I don't want to leave," she whispered. "You don't have to," he said, brushing her knuckles with his thumb. "I don't mean just here. I mean this. Us." He kissed her hand. "Then let's stay. In the cabin? In everything." She turned to him, eyes shining. "I think we found it," she said. "The version of us that survives." "No," he said. "The one that lives." And as the fire burned low and the forest curled close, two twin flames didn't just burn that night. They didn't just burn. They glowed slow, eternal, unmistakably alive. This time, the love stayed. Chapter 26, Coexistence. Harper arrived at Ethan's place with a weekend bag and a tote full of books she probably wouldn't read. He met her at the door in socks and a nervous smile, hair mussed like he'd run his hands through it 20 times in the last hour. "I brought coffee," she said, holding out 2 caramel frappés and a box of donuts like offerings. He took one, grinning, and socks. "Please tell me you brought socks." "I brought 3, she said, "plus a toothbrush, a raincoat, and the notebook I haven't touched since the cabin." He stepped back to let her in, and she stepped over the threshold like it mattered, because it did. This wasn't just a visit. This was a test of the ordinary. Could two souls forged in stardust learn to share a fridge, a sink, a silence? The first night, they made pasta and spilled half of it. Harper burned the garlic bread because they were kissing when the timer went off. Ethan scraped the pan with a guilty expression, but she only laughed and threw a kitchen towel at him. "This is real life," she said. "A little burnt, a little messy, but ours." They ate at the counter, legs touching, wine in mismatched mugs. Later, they watched a movie neither of them paid attention to, tangled on the couch, Harper's feet in Ethan's lap. When she fell asleep halfway through, he didn't move. He just watched her, memorizing the shape of her piece. By day 3, the romance had met reality. She left her hair in the sink. He forgot to rinse his dishes. She used his expensive face cream without realizing. He played his music a little too loud in the mornings. None of it was tragic, but the quiet friction of coexistence rubbed up against their dreamy reunion. This, us, the way we are now, can it survive grocery lists and work calls and burnt toast? "It's not about surviving it," he said. "It's about choosing it. Every day." She nodded slowly. "Even on the days when we don't feel like twin flames?" "Especially then," he said. "Because that's when we become them. Not in the magic, but in the mundane. That's the real fire." She leaned into him, and they sat there like that, surrounded love and candlelight, the quiet chaos of life folding gently around them. There was a part of her that still half expected the unraveling, the inevitable undoing that always followed the high. But every time she reached for her bag, she noticed his hoodie folded on her chair and stayed a little longer. He didn't know when her presence became part of the architecture sunlight through blinds, her shampoo in his pillow, but even the silence now felt shaped like her. They didn't move in together, not yet. But weekends blurred. Her toothbrush found a place in his medicine cabinet. His hoodie lived on the back of her chair. There were playlists made for cooking, shared grocery runs that turned into parking lot, slow dances, and long silences that didn't ask to be filled. They weren't rushing. They were rebuilding. One morning, Ethan showed up with 2 iced coffees and a bag of sunflower seeds. "For your porch," he said. "And your thoughts?" She laughed, tugged him inside. "You're a strange kind of romantic. You love it. I do. Some nights, she stayed at his place. Other nights, he'd drive to hers after work, music playing low, headlights guiding him back to her like instinct. They didn't make declarations. They made space. A new kind of intimacy was growing gentler, rooted. Not a fire, but a hearth. Still, it wasn't without moments. She turned, eyes searching his. "Do you think we'll keep choosing each other?" "I think we already are." There was comfort in the ordinary now, in shared laundry days and mismatched socks, in voice notes left during lunch breaks, in the way he'd rub her shoulders without asking, and she'd refill his coffee without thinking. Love had shifted. It wasn't the whirlwind anymore. It was the weathered path, the one they'd chosen to walk, hand in hand this time, without letting go. They didn't need the cabins or the outside showers to prove what they had. Now, they had coexistence. Not perfect, but true. And in that quiet space, between their breathing and the hush of rain, they both knew they were no longer trying to find their way back. They were already home. Chapter 27. The Anchor. It started with a message. The name blinked across Ethan's phone as he stood at the sink rinsing out 2 coffee mugs. Riley. "Hey, stranger. You still in Missouri? I've been thinking about you." He stared at it a moment too long. Harper was at the table, notebook open, pen moving lazily across the page. She looked up and smiled. "You want to go hike the bluff today?" He slid his phone into his pocket. "Yeah, that sounds perfect." But something lodged between them. A thread of tension neither of them could quite name yet. At the bluff, the sky opened in every direction, the wind cool on their skin. They sat close, knees touching, the quiet, steady, and familiar. But Harper felt it, that subtle shift, the way his thoughts seemed far off. Like his body was here, but something else was pulling at his mind. "You okay?" she asked. He nodded too quickly. "Just tired." She didn't push. Not yet. That night, Harper curled up against him on the couch as they watched the fire crackle. He kissed her shoulder, but it felt distracted. absent. "Ethan," she said softly. "What's going on?" He hesitated. Then, "Riley messaged me." Harper stilled. "Riley?" He nodded. "The one I dated after you. The one I thought might be my after you girl." Harper hadn't thought of Riley in months, but the name brought back a ghost, the version of her still breaking while Ethan had already moved on. She asked if I was still in Missouri. Said she'd been thinking about me lately. And? I didn't respond, he said quickly. Not because I was hiding it, but because I didn't know how to say it without it sounding like I was guilty. Her eyes searched his. "Are you?" "No," he said. For a split second, I wondered what it would be like to step back into something easy. And then I remembered. Easy doesn't mean right. Harper pulled her legs up under her. "And with me? It's complicated? With you," he said. "It's real. It's weight and wonder and history and hope. It's everything I ever wanted and everything I was terrified of screwing up." The fire hissed quietly, like it too was holding its breath. She let his words hang in the air for a moment. "You know," she said finally, "I'd rather you admit that than pretend it didn't affect you." He looked at her, vulnerable. "It scared me that it did." "But you told me. I love you too much not to." A long silence passed. Then she reached across the small space between them and placed her hand over his heart. "Tell her you've already found what she's still looking for." He leaned forward, forehead resting against hers. "I already did. I deleted the message. I didn't need a door to the past. I already walked through fire to get to the right one." Later, as they lay in bed closer than before, "Not just in body but in trust," Harper whispered. "I was afraid of losing you again." "You won't," he said. "Not to the past. Not to fear. Not to anything." She curled into his side, the steadiness of his heartbeat grounding her. In the morning, she found a scrap of paper on the kitchen counter. It was in his handwriting. "We don't need to run anymore. The past has nothing left to say. This love ours is the only thing I want to listen to." She pressed the note to her chest and smiled. Outside, the wind moved gently through the trees. And inside, two twin flames didn't just endure. They anchored. Chapter 28. Home at Last. Part 1. The Quiet Magic. They didn't make a big announcement. There were no boxes stacked high, no moving trucks parked on the curb. It happened gradually, like constellations forming one star, then another, until a new sky quietly revealed itself. Harper started leaving her books on his nightstand. Then, a toothbrush. Then a drawer full of soft tea, shirts and flannel shorts she always managed to steal anyway. They folded laundry on Sunday afternoons, mock arguing over whose socks were whose. Harper lobbed a balled-up pair at his head. He let it land, smiling like a man who knew he was exactly where he belonged. One Saturday, she brewed coffee in his kitchen like she always had and just didn't leave. It was the quiet magic of choosing each other. Not once, not loudly, but over and over again, until even the silence began to feel like home. Ethan slipped his arms around her waist, kissed the side of her neck. "You've lived here since the moment you walked back into my life." He paused, thoughtful, then added, "Actually, since the night you left that poem on my windshield." That night, they celebrated the only way they knew how. Simply, together. They cooked pen with creamy garlic chicken, dancing around each other in the kitchen to a playlist Ethan had labeled Us. Harper stirred the sauce while he sang into a wooden spoon, off-key and unashamed, until she laughed so hard she nearly dropped the pasta. "God, I missed this," she said, winding her arms around his neck. "We're here now," he murmured, brushing flour from her cheek. "We get to keep this." Dinner was candlelit, eaten at the table with bare feet and tangled legs. Every glance lingered. Every touch felt like a memory being rewritten, this time with softness instead of ache. Later, in the hush of evening, Ethan lit a single lamp in the bedroom. Harper stood at the mirror brushing her hair, the soft strokes slowing when she saw him behind her in the reflection. He came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist, his lips warm against the curve of her neck. "No more goodbyes," he whispered. She turned to face him, already reaching for the hem of his shirt. They undressed each other in slow pieces, letting the moment breathe. There was no rush, no proving, just presence. They made love in quiet light, deliberate, tender, endlessly familiar. The kind of love that doesn't begin in the body, but returns to it like a memory the soul never forgot. He kissed the freckle beneath her collarbone like it was a promise. She traced the arch of his shoulder like a poem written in fingertip and breath. When they moved together, it wasn't about hunger. It was about knowing. About being known. Afterward, steam wrapped around them in the shower. Harper leaned back against his chest while the water streamed down their skin. Ethan lathered her hair gently, pressing slow kisses to her wet shoulder. "I could get used to this," she murmured. "You'd better," he said, smiling into her neck. "This is your forever now." That night, Harper curled against him beneath soft sheets, her head on his chest, his heartbeat steady beneath her cheek. "I used to wonder," she whispered, "if love could last once the magic wore off." Ethan's fingers threaded through her hair. "And now? Now I know. This is the magic." He pulled her closer, his lips brushing her temple. "Then let's keep making it. Every single day." It wasn't grand gestures or fireworks. It wasn't perfect words or polished endings. It was this, the quiet, sacred magic of choosing each other again and again until even the silence felt like home. Chapter 28. Home at Last. Part 2. The Fire and the Shelter. Some souls don't just pass through your life, they imprint. And no matter how far they wander, a part of them stays. Glowing. Waiting. Home. Harper. Over the next few weeks, they built rituals without ever meaning to. Sunday morning pancakes. Dancing barefoot while the coffee brewed. Love notes tucked into coat pockets. Post-it poems on the bathroom mirror, curling slightly at the edges by nightfall. Sometimes, they'd make love in the most unexpected moments, mid-laundry, paint still drying on the hallway walls, or in the slow burn of morning light tangled in sheets and sleep-warmed skin. It was never just physical. It was sacred, reaffirming. Afternoons passed in quiet harmony reading on the porch, toes touching, breath sinking. Nights, they'd lie in the dark, holding each other in a silence that asked for nothing, because everything had already been said. One evening, a thunderstorm rolled in. The lights flickered. Harper squealed when the power gave out. "Guess it's candlelight again," Ethan teased, rummaging under the sink for their little stash. They curled up on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, the rain thrumming steady on the roof like a second heartbeat. "Remember when love felt like lightning?" Harper asked softly. Ethan pressed a kiss to the back of her hand. "Now it feels like shelter." She laid her head on his shoulder, the quiet wrapping around them like a vow. "I think we built something stronger than the storm." He didn't answer. He didn't have to. Outside, the world roared. Inside, they were home. A few days later, another storm came, this one sudden, visceral, impatient, not candlelight and calm. This storm was wild and unrelenting, the kind that rattles windows and shrinks the world to four walls and breath. Harper stood at the bedroom window, lightning carving her silhouette in silver. She wore one of Ethan's old shirts, soaked from a quick run in the rain. It clung to her like second skin, her hair wild, her cheeks flushed. "God, we're soaked," she laughed, twisting her hair into a bun. Ethan leaned against the doorframe, watching her like he'd never stop. "Come here," he said, voice low thick with something between reverence and ache. She turned. Something in his tone rooted her in place. She stepped toward him slowly. "I didn't know if we'd ever get back here," he said, "but I never stopped dreaming it." He met her halfway. His hands cupped her face. They just stood there for a moment, breathing each other in. Thunder rolled. The room held its breath. Then he kissed her. Not tentative, not sweet. A kiss full of years, the ones they'd lost, the ones they were reclaiming. It was messy, needy, real. She melted into him, fingers fisting in his shirt. He backed her up until her legs hit the bed, their bodies flush and already burning. "I missed this," he murmured against her throat. "This fire. This. Us. You have me," she whispered, tugging his shirt over his head. "All of me." Their clothes peeled away like memories they no longer needed. His hands mapped her with awe, slow, reverent. Each kiss a benediction. Each sigh, a thread pulling tighter. Her body rose to meet his, hips rolling into rhythm. She flipped them with a soft laugh, straddling him, her hair spilling around her like flame. "Let me love you," she said, breath-catching, eyes locked with his. "Let me remind you who you are." He didn't speak. He didn't need to. He just looked at her like she was the only truth that had ever mattered. She moved with slow precision, intentional, intimate, a reclamation, a rewriting. Their bodies tangled, their mouths chasing each other through moans and murmurs, a symphony of touch and breath and memory. And when they crested, when the moment broke over them, it wasn't release. It was return. Afterward, slick with sweat and breathless, Harper lay against him. The storm had softened to a distant hum, but inside them, something steady still burned. "Do you think it'll always be like this?" she asked quietly. "The fire?" She nodded. Ethan traced her jaw with his thumb. "We are the fire, Harper." She smiled, tired, wild, completely his. "Then let's never burn out." "We won't," he whispered. "We'll just keep glowing." Later that week, Ethan found a page from Harper's notebook tucked beneath his pillow. Her handwriting, soft and slanted, almost like a secret. In the hush between thunder and morning light, they found that home wasn't a place. It was the fire they tended, the shelter they became, and the glow they vowed would never fade. H.M. He read it twice, then folded it carefully and placed it in the drawer beside the bed, right where the rest of their forever was beginning. The end.